Chapter 743. Lu Weisha did not come to school for several days in a row. The kindergarten teacher only told other concerned children that Lu Weisha had not returned home yet, so this situation lasted for a week. A new Monday arrived. Yang Yi sent Shishi to kindergarten. When he was about to walk out of the gate of Springfield Kindergarten, he finally saw a familiar figure. David. He was standing beside his car, looking at the kindergarten's teaching building, and his gaze fell on the location of the upper class. David. Yang Yi greeted him with a smile. Yang Yi spoke Swedish, and he had a lot of topics to talk about with him. It could be said that Yang Yi was one of David's closest friends in China. When he saw Yang Yi, David was also very happy. The two of them exchanged greetings in Swedish on the side of the road. You and Lu Weisha went back to Sweden for a long time. Shishi missed you so much. She was talking to me last weekend. When will Lu Weisha come back? I can only tell her that she will be back soon. Yang Yi shrugged and said, now she should be very happy to see Lu Weisha. David shook his head with a wry smile and sighed. I'm sorry, my friend. Although Lu Weisha is back, maybe you should go back tonight and comfort Shishi. Hey, this lovely little girl is Lu Weisha's best friend in China. In Yang Yi's surprised eyes, David told Yang Yi about the changes in his work and the subsequent arrangements for Lu Weisha's life and study. It turned out that they came back so late because David needed to go through some procedures at the Swedish headquarters of Wall Motors. Originally, David did not intend to bring Lu Weisha back to China because Maria would not come back. She would stay in Sweden to help David take care of his life after he came back. However, Lu Weisha missed Shishi and the others, so she had to say goodbye to her good friends. Lu Weisha couldn't bear to leave her friends and cried in Sweden for a few days. I could only bring her here so that she could play with her friends for a few more days. When I'm done handing over my work at the end of the month, we have to go home. In the future, Lu Weisha will also need to go to primary school in Sweden. David sighed. By the end of the month? It was already late April, and there was only 1 week left. I can understand. After all, your hometown is Sweden. Yang Yi gently patted David's shoulder and said calmly, it's okay. Even if they are halfway across the globe, I believe they will still remember this friendship and the joy of the past year. Having said that, Yang Yi could imagine how sad Shishi would be when she found out about this. Shishi was a girl who valued relationships a lot. It could be seen from the way she kept talking about writing to Lu Weisha when she was traveling in Australia. Compared to his daughter, Yang Yi felt a little ashamed. When he treated friendship, he was actually a little indifferent. Especially when he got along with David, he completely interpreted the old saying, the friendship between gentlemen is as indifferent as water. Hearing the news that David, his friend, was leaving, his heart did not waver. He was only more concerned about how sad Shishi would be. Would you like a cup of coffee? Yang Yi felt that he should learn from his daughter, and invited David. David had just returned to China, and now was the time to hand over his duties. He was not in a hurry to go back to work, so he gladly accepted the invitation. It was the same coffee shop on the corner. Ding Xiang and Guizi had already returned from Shanghai before the Qingming festival. Now Ding Xiang was at the bar with Sugar Cube, taking care of the shop's business. Which one of you can move aside for me? Yang Yi shrugged and smiled. I'll make a cup of coffee for David. The space in the bar was limited. It was okay for 2 people, but it would be very crowded with 3 people. Ding Xiang was the one who was familiar with Yang Yi's habits. She took out Yang Yi's treasured coffee beans from the counter, then walked out with a smile. Sugar Cube was also quite clever. She quickly wiped the table with a rag and helped take out the coffee grinder, saying, Boss, I'll help you. It did not take long to grind 2 cups of coffee. After a while, Yang Yi and David held the coffee and leaned against the bar, drinking and chatting. Sugar Cube watched for a while, then went to Ding Xiang and whispered to her, Sister Ding Xiang, what is the boss talking about with that foreigner? It doesn't sound like English. That's David, a Swedish. Brother Yang should be speaking Swedish with him. Ding Xiang looked up and smiled. The boss can speak Swedish? Sugar Cube clicked her tongue. Didn't the news say that the boss sang English songs a few days ago? How does he know so many things? That's why he's the boss. Ding Xiang smiled and pinched Sugar Cube's face. She said, Stop gossiping and work hard. One day, you'll be as good as the boss. At first, Yang Yi only talked about coffee with David. As they chatted, David, who was a little sentimental, sighed with emotion. Although most of the coffee shops in China sell terrible coffee, it's different here. Moreover, I can drink the best coffee here. In fact, many things are the same. When I first came to China, I felt that I couldn't adapt to everything. But gradually, I found that I liked the life in China. Just as I got used to it, I had to leave again. Yang Yi smiled slightly. That's right. China is a magical country. It has rich and beautiful scenery, more than 5,000 years of culture, and strong, tolerant and friendly Chinese people. The more you understand it, the easier it will be for you to like it. My friend, there's one thing you missed out. David laughed. It's very safe in China. Did you know? My bicycle was once stolen. 2 days later, the police helped me find it. I found it hard to believe. Yang Yi was speechless. In fact, he wanted to tell David, "That's because you're a foreigner." David was in high spirits. He continued, "It's different in Sweden. We took in a lot of refugees from war-torn countries. Although we saved their lives out of kindness, it's difficult to mix different cultures. It often causes social conflicts. Moreover, guns are controlled in China, but not in Sweden. To be honest, when I go back to Sweden, I want to send Lu Weisha to a proper school, but I'm still worried about the safety of my family when I pass through some mixed neighborhoods." David paused and said, "In China, I'm not worried about these problems. Some of my employees' children are studying, and they let their children go home on their own." Yang Yi could see David's anxiety about the country he was usually proud of. He could not help but fall silent. This situation was the same in Europe. Under the influence of refugees, the environment abroad was not as good as before. It was not like what many people who worshipped foreign things thought, that the moon was round abroad. In contrast, the public security in China was much better. Of course, in terms of social welfare, who was good and who was bad, it was a matter of opinion. But home is home after all. It's the place you dream of, isn't it? Yang Yi could only say this to David. David had also figured this out. He smiled brightly and said, "Yes, home is home. No matter what, I still love Sweden, my hometown." "No matter what, I'd like to congratulate you on your promotion, my friend," Yang Yi said with a smile. "Thank you, Yang. If you and your children come to Sweden to play, you must look for me. I'll take you to try Swedish coffee and berry pie." David drank his coffee and said goodbye to Yang Yi. Chapter 744. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. Xixi, who didn't know what was going on, quickly spotted Lu Weisha, who was surrounded by Chen Shiyin and Nan Jiaoyu. Of course, Xixi was so happy that she didn't notice the melancholy on Lu Weisha's face. "Lu Weisha, you're back?" The little girl ran over in surprise, pulled Lu Weisha's hand and said, "Xixi." Lu Weisha saw Xixi and seemed even sadder, her eyes turning red. "Xixi, Lu Weisha doesn't seem happy," Chen Shiyin said loudly to Xixi as if she was making a report. "Hey, quickly ask her why she's unhappy. It's really worrying people to death." Chen Shiyin didn't know where she learned the word worrying people to death, but she liked to use it recently. Nan Jiaoyu scratched his head and muttered, "I also don't know why Lu Weisha is unhappy. We didn't bully her." Xixi was also very confused. She pulled Lu Weisha's hand and asked, "Lu Weisha, why aren't you saying anything? Did someone bully you?" "I can help you tell the teacher." Chen Shiyin puffed out her chest and righteously snatched Lan Xian's line. "Who asked Lan Xian not to arrive yet?" His friends chimed in one after another. Although it was a bit noisy, their deep concern was still revealed. This made Lu Weisha even sadder. She didn't know how to tell her friends this bad news. Fortunately, Teacher Mu came over to help Lu Weisha out. After a while, when all the children arrived, she held Lu Weisha's hand and helped Lu Weisha announce the news. Before this Friday, Lu Weisha will continue to attend classes with everyone. Thank you, Lu Weisha. You've brought us a lot of happiness this year. You've also warmly helped the other children learn to speak English. We will definitely not forget our friendship with you. Children, right? Teacher Mu asked gently. Wang Shijuan, who liked to be in the limelight, and a few children who were used to answering the teacher's questions responded, yes. There were also many children who were in a daze, such as Shishi. It was unknown if she was still unable to accept this fact or if she really did not understand. She looked at Mr. Mu in confusion, not knowing what to do. On the other hand, Nan Zhaoyu was more honest. He said, teacher. Zhaoyu, what's wrong? Mr. Mu looked over. Nan Zhaoyu asked in his hoarse voice. Lu Weisha went back to her home abroad. Does that mean we won't be able to see Lu Weisha again? Why are you so smart? Why do you have to say it out loud? Lu Weisha's mouth twitched, and large drops of tears slid down her freckled face. Yang Luoqi and Lan Xian, the two easily emotional girls, could not help but start sobbing when they saw Lu Weisha's sad appearance. Lan Xian cried and shouted, I don't want Lu Weisha to go home. At this time Mr. Mu, who saw that the situation was not good, hurriedly said, it's not like that. Although Lu Weisha is going back to her home abroad, you'll still have a chance to meet in the future because you're good friends. Lu Weisha, when you go back, you'll also remember these friends who played with you, right? Mr. Mu asked kindly as he squatted down and wiped Lu Weisha's tears with a tissue. I miss you all. Lu Weisha nodded, choking with sobs. After nearly a year, Lu Weisha's Chinese had really improved by leaps and bounds. Although there were still some shortcomings in grammar, at least there were no problems with her accent. In the future, if you have the chance, you must come back to China and see these friends, okay? Mr. Mu smiled. Okay. Lu Weisha was still shedding tears. Hey, what's there to cry about? Chen Shiyun said casually. I'm going to Lu Weisha's home to play in the future. I haven't been to Lu Weisha's home yet. Obviously, Chen Shiyun did not understand the teacher's meaning. However, Lan Xian's fighting spirit was inexplicably aroused. She sniffed and shouted, I also want to go to Lu Weisha's home. I'll ask my mother to take me abroad to play. I can go to Lu Weisha's home. I want to go first. Chen Shiyun was not convinced. I want to go first. I want to go first. I want to go first. I want to say it first. The two little girls had forgotten their sadness and started to quarrel. Mr. Mu did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Mr. Mu did not interfere with them because the two little girls' quarrel had diluted some of the sadness of parting. It's okay, you're still in class with everyone this week. Mr. Mu caressed Lu Weisha, who was still crying, and said softly, let's not think so far ahead. Let's spend this week happily, okay? Lu Weisha did not respond, or perhaps she did not understand. Mr. Mu looked around and found that Shishi was not crying. She also knew that Shishi and Lu Weisha had the best relationship, so she brought Lu Weisha to Shishi and let the two girls hold hands. Shishi, I know you're the most sensible. Now I'll give you a task, okay? Mr. Mu squatted down and said softly. In fact, when Shishi found out that Lu Weisha was going to leave everyone and go abroad, she was also very sad. Shishi's eyes were red. However, when the little girl saw Lu Weisha's helpless look, she did not know why, but she did not cry. Perhaps it was because this scene was familiar. When Lu Weisha first arrived, wasn't she also at a loss in the crowd? Lu Weisha is very sad now. You're her good friend, so spend more time with Lu Weisha. We'll make her happy. We'll let her have a happy last week in China, and she'll always remember you as her good friends, okay? Mr. Mu's voice brought Shishi back to her senses. Mr. Mu's trusting eyes gave Shishi a wonderful sense of responsibility. The little girl nodded her head obediently. Shishi, I want to go home, but I don't want to leave you guys. After Mr. Mu left, Lu Weisha suddenly spoke in Swedish, as if she had opened up a chatterbox. Lu Weisha, don't be sad. Shiryin told Xian Air that we'll go to your house to visit you and play with you. Shishi also spoke in Swedish. Compared to a year ago, Shishi's Swedish was much more fluent. Will you come too? Lu Weisha looked at Shishi expectantly. I'll definitely go and play with you. Shishi nodded her head seriously. Really? Lu Weisha asked in surprise with tears in her eyes. Aya, you guys are speaking Swedish again. We can't understand it. Can you speak in Mandarin? Chen Shiryin came over. Her voice was a little funny, and she spoke in Mandarin with a lot of emphasis. I'm telling Lu Weisha that I'll also go to Lu Weisha's house with my papa. She wasn't as carefree as Chen Shiyin. The little girl's mood was still a little heavy, so her tone was very serious. Excian and I will go too. Chichi, will you go too? Chen Shiyin asked. Young Luoqi wasn't very assertive. The little girl rubbed her teary eyes and whispered, I want to ask my father. I want to ask too. Nan Xiaoyu interrupted. No need to ask. I have pocket money. I can go by myself. Chen Shiyin had 2 yuan of pocket money in her pocket. She was so generous that she waved her hand and said generously, I also have a lot of pocket money and a red packet for the Spring Festival. My mom bought me 2 big pigs and asked me to save them. She said, but I think my papa can take me there. Lan Xian was very good at managing money. Her eyes lit up and she said, your father can take you there. You can give your pocket money to Chi and Jiaoyu so that they can go too. Yes, Xian, that's a good idea. Chen Shiyin said excitedly. Yang Luoqi and Nan Xiaoyu looked at Xi expectantly. Xi, who now had 2 piggy banks, had become the hope of the whole village. The little girl was a little reluctant, but she nodded generously and said, well, I'll give it to Chi and Jiaoyu. Yang Luoqi and Nan Xiaoyu both laughed happily. Perhaps because of their smiles, Lu Weisha felt warm in her heart and her sadness faded a lot. Lu Weisha hugged Xi's arm and said excitedly, I'll come to China to play with you too. My father will agree. We'll always be good friends. It seemed that the little guys had recovered. Xi also told Lu Weisha the story of her trip to Australia. Lan Xian and the others, who had heard it several times, even chimed in to help. It was a lively scene as usual. At noon in the studio, Murphy, who had just received the news and was worried, asked Yang Yi to call. Yang Yi was a little surprised by Teacher Mu's response. Teacher said that Xi didn't cry, and she did a great job. She even helped teacher to comfort Lu Weisha. Yang Yi put down his phone and said to Murphy in confusion, That's my daughter. Look, she did a great job. She's so sensible. Murphy said proudly. No, I think something's wrong. According to Xi's character, it's impossible for her not to feel sad. Yang Yi spent the most time with his daughter, so he knew Xi better than Murphy. What's wrong? Do you have to be satisfied when your daughter cries? Murphy was a little puzzled and said with a smile. Don't worry, maybe Xi has grown up. Yang Yi didn't understand the situation until he received Xi in the evening. Chapter 745. Today, Yang Yi was still the same as before. He didn't let Xi wait for long and came early. After a while, Mr. Mu appeared in the classroom with him. Yang your father is here to pick you up. Goodbye, Xi. Xi was very popular. As soon as she woke up, the classroom was filled with people saying goodbye to her. Of course, many children's voices were filled with envy. They also wanted their parents to come and pick them up earlier. In the past, Xi would respond enthusiastically. But today, she seemed to be in low spirits and forgot to respond, especially when she saw her father's concerned eyes. The little girl carried her small school bag and slowly walked over. Her small body leaned into her father's arms as he squatted down. Yang Yi felt his daughter hugging his neck and her small head leaning over. It was very similar to how she used to behave when she was sad. He seemed to understand something. Yang Yi carried Xi and gently patted his daughter's soft hair as he said softly, Say goodbye to the teachers and students. Xi was still very obedient. After her father reminded her, she waved to her friends as usual and said goodbye to them tomorrow. However, Yang Yi could still see that she was in low spirits. After coming out of the classroom and walking down the stairs, Yang Yi asked, What's wrong? Why are you suddenly sad? In her father's warm embrace, Xi finally shed tears. As if she was afraid that others would find out. The little girl lowered her head and leaned on her father's shoulder, sobbing softly. This was actually what Yang Yi had expected, although he didn't want to see Xi cry. Don't cry, don't cry. Yang Yi gently patted Xi's back and comforted her softly. Is it because of Lu Weisha? Xi pursed her lips and nodded as tears fell. She took the opportunity to shrink her head into her father's broad chest. Didn't you do very well today? Miss Mu also said that you helped her comfort Lu Weisha. You did a great job. When Mom heard about it, she was very proud of you. Why are you sad now? Yang Yi asked. She sobbed for a while before she said, But I don't want Lu Weisha to leave. Lu Weisha wants to go back to her hometown because her parents are going back. She can't be left alone in China, right? Yang Yi explained. Her words did not have any effect. She was still very sad. Yang Yi carried Shi out of the kindergarten and back to the car. The little girl cried in her father's arms for a while, venting out a lot of the sadness that had accumulated for the day. Of course, it was still difficult to let go of it. Come tell Dad. How did you help your teacher comfort Lu Weisha today? Yang Yi wanted to pick something happy to talk about. Mom and Dad are very proud of you for being so sensible. When Shi heard her father's words, she seemed to be even more wronged. The little girl sat in the car and grabbed the hem of her clothes. She pursed her lips and said tearfully, Lu Weisha cried first. I want her. Don't cry. Lu Weisha is very pitiful. Although he did not know where the pity came from, Yang Yi could still feel Shi's pure and kind heart. So you didn't cry because you wanted to comfort Lu Weisha? Yang Yi asked. He was not in a hurry to start the car and go home. Instead, he wanted to coax his daughter first. Yes. The little girl pouted her lips that were red from crying and nodded seriously. Perhaps she did not feel it before, but now that she was talking about it with her father, she seemed to have suffered a lot. Yang Yi looked at his daughter's sensible appearance, and his heart almost melted. His heart ached as he hugged Shi and kissed her tear-stained little face. After a while he said, It's okay. You did very well. With Dad here, you can vent whatever sadness you have in your heart. Of course, she still had some sad things in her heart. The little girl sniffled, grabbed her father's hand that was wiping her face, and said pitifully, I even gave my little pig to Chi and to Xiaoyu, because Xaner said that they could also give it to them, and they could also play with Lu Weisha. What? Yang Yi was confused when he heard this. The little girl did not cry as hard as before, but she was still sobbing. Therefore, after sobbing for a while, Yang Yi finally understood the gist of it. You mean, Chen Shiyin said that she wanted to use her pocket money to visit Lu Weisha. Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry at these children's brain circuits. Then, Xian Air suggested that you generously give your 2 piggy banks to Chi and Xiaoyu. Right? The little girl's face was full of reluctance. Her little body twisted in her father's arms sadly and said, I don't want to give my piglet to them. But Chi and Xiaoyu can't go to Lu Weisha's house to play. Yang Yi was really moved by his daughter this time. Although these little guys' logic was ridiculous, their innocence was reflected in the absurdity. Especially Shi, the pocket money in her piggy bank might not even be enough to buy a plane ticket, because a large amount of Shi's pocket money had been cheated by Murphy, who helped her open an account and save it. The piggy bank was full of loose money, but for her good friend, she was willing to give away the piggy bank that she had saved for more than a year. Yang Yi did not know what to say. Whether the little girl was silly or too naive, Yang Yi would rather she keep this sincerity, kindness, and enthusiasm for longer. This was something that was worthy of Yang Yi's protection. This shows that you love everyone very much, Yang Yi said softly. Because you have a good relationship, you are willing to do things for each other, don't you think so? But Lu Weisha wants to go home. Papa, I won't be able to see Lu Weisha in the future, right? The little girl was still entangled in this problem. I don't like this. It's not that you won't be able to see her, but you may not be able to see her often in the future. Yang Yi pointed to his heart and said softly, But what does it matter? As long as you are still good friends, you will be happy to see each other again after a long time. Really? The little girl had already made a concession in her heart. Really? It's like you took a few months off during the summer and winter holidays. You didn't see each other, but when school started, you were still very happy. It's the same principle, but it may take a longer time, maybe a few more months, to see each other again. But it doesn't matter. In addition to seeing each other, you can also call each other, or chat online with Lu Weisha about your recent situation. Yang Yi said with a smile. Just like me and Grandpa? Shishi quickly understood. Yes. Yang Yi smiled and patted Shishi's little head. But Papa, will you take me to Lu Weisha's house to play? The little girl finally stopped crying after her father coaxed her for a long time, but she still asked nervously. She had not yet asked her father this question. Of course I will, Yang Yi said with a smile. Dad promises you that next summer, when Mom and Dad are free, we will take you to Lu Weisha to play. Chapter 746. Shishi was not completely happy. After all, although Lu Weisha could still play with them for a week, and although they could still see Lu Weisha in the future, she still knew that after Lu Weisha returned to China, there would be fewer opportunities for them to see each other. Therefore, when the little girl went to kindergarten the next day, she was still in low spirits. However, Yang Yi did not try to persuade Shishi anymore. He only tried to guide her a little, so that she would not get into a dead end. All good things must come to an end. Everyone would experience such disappointment, and Shishi was no exception. Yang Yi believed that there was no need to interfere too much. After a few days, Sisi would be able to walk out of this matter. After all, how could a child hide so many things in her heart? Sometimes it was hard to tell whether Shishi was precocious or precocious. Compared to children of the same age, Shishi was not only tall, but also obviously smarter. She learned things very quickly, and was very sensible at the same time. Sometimes, Shishi was so sensible that it made people feel sorry for her. For example, when it came to her concern for Lu Weisha, Yang Yi would actually rather that she cried like Lan Xian, and then continued to eat, drink, and play without a care. However, it was not right to say that she was precocious, because Shishi was still very naive, like a piggy bank. She still foolishly believed in Lan Xian's wild ideas. Another example was that she believed in the existence of a fairy tale world. Although she rarely talked about it, the little girl would sometimes sing, "Let's go," and still look forward to seeing Sister Elsa one day. There was a small episode about the piggy bank. After Yang Yi and Murphy talked about it in the evening, Murphy felt emotional and felt that it was interesting. She could not help but share this naive little story of the children on micro-broadcasting. Yang Yi followed and shared some details. For example, Shishi was considerate when she took care of her foreign classmates, and Shishi's tears only fell when she threw herself into her father's arms after school. Even though there were only a few words, Yang Yi's writing style always gave people a feeling of immersion. Just look at the comments below the micro-broadcast and you'll know. Although Yang Yi, this bastard, still doesn't give Shishi a picture. Why does my mind keep thinking of Shishi's tearful face? My heart aches. How can I let my wife be wronged? Although you are my father-in-law, I still have to fight for my wife. She is so sensible. I feel that Yang Yi and Murphy are good at educating her. Share more parenting tips. Our family's devil is 2 years older than Sisi, but he only knows how to be naughty every day. I really want to give Shishi a hug. Once I hug her, I can't bear to let go. Shishi actually has foreign classmates? I can't help but lament the life of the rich. The children of celebrities receive a superior education. This comment was a little sour. I love Shishi so much. The autistic Wang Mai in the movie actually has so many friends in real life. It's a pity that Yang Yi doesn't bring his child to variety shows. Except for a few scenes, I never see Shishi again. Previous poster, let me remind you. In the video of Yang Yi singing for Murphy in Australia, Shishi appeared. Shishi popped her head out of the beach chair and watched her father sing. She looked so cute. Could it be that this story was deliberately made up? It's too cute. How can a little girl who is not even 6 years old know so much? Anyway, I've seen children who can't even speak properly at such a young age. How can they hold back their sad emotions? Previous poster, your logic is a little far-fetched. Children in this world are not all made from the same mold. What's so strange about Shishi being a little more sensible? In my poor hometown, some children from poor families start cooking and washing clothes at the age of 6. They take care of their younger siblings like adults. They know more than Shishi. It's possible that a certain celebrity made up a story to gain fame. But Yang Yi and Murphy? Forget it. The two of them are famous for keeping a low profile. After Shishi acted in the movie, she didn't accept a single interview. How many variety shows have invited Shishi? What happened in the end? 2 months after the movie was released, there was not a single show. Although there were still some voices of doubt, it couldn't hide the fact that most fans liked Shishi from the bottom of their hearts. And this daily routine gave the netizens a new understanding of Shishi. It also made them like Shishi and pity this sensible little girl. It had been almost a week since Yang Yi sang an English song and became popular. However, the domestic media was still reporting the reactions of the foreign media. It was as if Yang Yi's recognition by the foreign media was a feat that brought glory to the country. Of course, the foreign media's reports made them feel proud. Long before the domestic media started to report, there were already overseas students who revealed Yang Yi's identity to the foreign media. Later, Mo Xiaowan confirmed the news on behalf of Yang Yi. The domestic reporters also quickly spread the name of the song overseas. Although it didn't cause a sensation in the whole of America, some American media's entertainment section still reported this news. It turned out that Bruno Levin's judgment was right. This Asian man was not only a professional singer, but he was also a very famous singer-songwriter. He had tens of millions of fans in China. The Americans were a little surprised. Tens of millions? To the sparsely populated Americans, this was a huge number. Just 2 days ago, a media outlet accidentally received a piece of news that no one else had noticed. Through their report, the Americans found out that the original novel of the TV series, Prison Break, which they were crazy about this year, was actually written by this man. This news was confirmed by the director of Prison Break, Paul Tingyi. Oh my God, is this person a god? To be able to write such a beautiful song, and to come up with such a wonderful plot like Prison Break. A reporter expressed his shock in his column. Compared to a song that didn't have a source, the news of the already popular Prison Break was more eye-catching. The domestic media also crazily reposted the foreign news and hyped up Yang Yi as a national hero. He had conquered the Americans. Of course, these rumors were all exaggerated. Yang Yi did not conquer the Americans. The Americans only sighed with emotion and then gave up. They wouldn't waste too much energy on an Asian. Only some domestic media outlets and domestic fans were still celebrating. However, Yang Yi did not participate. He was in a good mood. No matter how the domestic media reported, he did not respond and did not get complacent. After a short break, Yang Yi and Murphy started to work again. Yang Yi wanted to release an English song himself. Of course, he did not want to be the only one in the limelight. Under Yang Yi's coaxing, Murphy also recorded Let's Go with him. It was not that the two of them had to be inseparable. Yang Yi felt that this was a good opportunity. It was rare for there to be so much international attention. It was a good opportunity to push Murphy out of the country. Yang Yi was very curious. With Murphy's singing skills, how high could she reach in the international market? That afternoon, Yang Yi and Murphy came out of the recording studio. Mo Xiaowan walked in with a notebook and reported to them, "Sis, brother-in-law, there are 2 things now. The first is about Sister Luo Xian. She wants to invite. It's best if the 2 of you can go on her Jixin interview." Mo Xiaowan looked at Yang Yi and the others. She hesitated for a moment and said, "Sister Luo Xian means that it's best to invite the 2 of you. If it's not possible, either you or brother-in-law can go. However, I feel that Sister Luo Xian's favor." Yes, the favor was the biggest problem. Luo Xian helped a lot to get the Shanghai TV station. Of course, even if this was not mentioned, Luo Xian and Murphy were close. She was one of Murphy's few good friends in the industry. Since she made this invitation, Mo Fei was too embarrassed to refuse. "Let's go. We'll go together." Yang Yi nodded at Murphy and made the decision for the troubled Murphy. Obviously, Luo Xian also wanted to freeload. The second thing is that when you were recording the song, director Chen Fengchen called. He wants to meet brother-in-law at the coffee shop tomorrow. Mo Xiaowan said. Director Chen came to River Town? Murphy was a little surprised. Hasn't Drawing Sword finished filming? Mo Xiaowan also shook her head in confusion. She did not know why Chen Fengchen was looking for Yang Yi. This old man doesn't visit without a reason. Yang Yi smiled and said, I'm afraid he's looking for me for something. Was it day-night journey? Or relieving grocery store? Yang Yi was too lazy to guess. He would know when he saw Chen Fengchen tomorrow. Chapter 747. Chen Fengchen was already very familiar with Rivertown, especially in the past 2 years. 2 big-budget TV series were filmed in the Jiangnan military region of Rivertown. Chen Fengchen even joked that he was almost half a Rivertown citizen in a CCTV interview program. Therefore, after the old master dealt with some reporters who caught him at the airport, he took a taxi alone to the Media University of Rivertown in Tingshan District. It was drizzling in Rivertown today, especially in Tingshan District. The Tingshan District was backed by the humid Tingshan District, so the rain was even more plentiful. The drizzle had been falling since dawn and hadn't stopped, dyeing the banks of the Grand Canal into the color of ink. Chen Fengchen got out of the taxi. He didn't need an umbrella. He was wearing a jazz hat and a windbreaker, so he wasn't afraid of the drizzle. However, the puddles on the road were a little troublesome, so the old master had to quicken his pace. Ring ring. Just like more than a year ago, Chen Fengchen pushed open the door of the coffee shop at the corner of the street. The wind chime at the door rang clearly, and at the same time, the warm atmosphere in the coffee shop and the faint folk song were pushed to Chen Fengchen. Time never came back, only leaving the bleak years behind. Ideals obliterate feelings, I just want to leave. On the small stage in the middle of the coffee shop, 2 boys were playing the guitar and singing affectionately. Note 1. The beautiful melody of the folk song and the slightly sad and hoarse singing made the coffee shop seem to be plated with a layer of golden age, intoxicating people. The customers in the coffee shop were also listening quietly. They didn't even care about the disturbance caused by the wind chime when Chen Fengchen arrived. At the bar counter, Sugar Cube was looking at Miao Chuan with infatuation. Although Lu Xiaoshu was the lead singer, Miao Chuan's introverted and melancholic aura was like a prince in a purple robe, with a unique charm. Ding Xiang reacted in time. She stretched out her finger and poked Sugar Cube. Only then did Sugar Cube run out of the bar counter in a panic and greet Chen Fengchen. Hello, teacher, hello. What would you like to drink? Seeing Chen Fengchen, Sugar Cube was a little hesitant. She thought that Jiang Chuan's teacher had come, so she greeted him nervously. Let's not talk about what to drink first. I came to the coffee shop to look for Yang Yi. Chen Fengchen smiled at Feng Tang. Unexpectedly, Yang Yi's coffee shop also changed. Not only did the decorations change, but there were also 2 more waitresses. More than a year ago, when Chen Fengchen came over, he saw that Yang Yi was still fighting alone. Of course, this was understandable. After all, Yang Yi's identity had changed a lot. Ah. Are you looking for our boss? Feng Tang exclaimed in a low voice. She hesitated for a moment before asking Ding Xiang for help. However, the 2 of them were no longer needed. Yang Yi, who was sitting in a quiet private booth, had sharp ears. When he heard the commotion, he took the initiative to welcome him. He shook hands with Chen Fengchen and said with a smile, Director Chen, if there's anything you need, you can just give me a call. Why do you have to come to Jiangqing personally? And it's raining outside. Until now, Yang Yi still didn't know that Chen Fengchen came in a taxi. He thought that such a big director like Chen Fengchen would have a private car to send him to Jiangqing. I might be old, but my body is still robust. Walking around more is healthier than staying at home all day long. Chen Fengchen said without any trace of politeness as he continued. But of course, I'm here to discuss something important with you. Yang Yi led Chen Fengchen to his private booth. Chen Fengchen liked to drink tea, so Yang Yi had already prepared a tea set. He made tea while chatting with Chen Fengchen. Sitting down and waiting. Reality has made me understand that the place where the dream collapsed is now covered with moss. While Yang Yi was making tea, Thousand Mile Chuanshu's song gradually came to an end, and the deep sorrow in the lyrics came back to haunt him. What's wrong with the 2 kids singing in your coffee shop? Why are their songs so lifeless? Chen Fengchen didn't get straight to the point. Instead, he frowned and said with dissatisfaction, Young people should be filled with hope for the future. Their voices must be filled with vitality. Yang Yi smiled and told Chen Fengchen about Qianli Chuanshu's experience. Wait a minute. You're talking about Tang Rong from Xiangnan? Chen Fengchen had heard of him. You did this? Chen Fengchen was indeed experienced. He immediately sensed that something was wrong. What does it have to do with me? I just couldn't stand it, so I paid for their lawsuit. Tang Rong was investigated. Someone who hated him for a long time probably took the opportunity to give him a fatal stab. Yang Yi obviously wouldn't admit it. He changed the topic. This song, Ideal Monologue, was written when they were at their most desperate. Under such circumstances, it's understandable that they would write desperate lyrics. Chen Fengchen nodded. But people should always look forward. Director Chen, don't worry. They've already adjusted themselves. If you don't believe me, I'll get them to sing a song that was written last month. Yang Yi smiled. He walked out and whispered a few words to Lu Xiaoshu, who had just come down to rest. Lu Xiaoshu nodded. He and Miao Chuan carried their guitars up the stage and gently plucked the strings. Facing the microphone, they said softly, "Sorry, we're back." The students in the coffee shop laughed. However, they didn't make a ruckus. They didn't want to disturb the peaceful atmosphere of the coffee shop. This time I'll bring you our new song. Of course, some of you have already heard Growing Up Gradually several times. Lu Xiaoshu finished his simple speech and started to play. Note 2. Yang Yi boiled water and used the posture of Kung Fu tea to brew tea. He washed the cup and brewed tea again. Then he poured a cup for Chen Fengchen. Chen Fengchen drank while listening. There's always a gap between people. There's always a problem in life. There's always too much hope. In the end, if things don't go your way, it'll be extinguished by time. This phrase was actually still filled with confusion and confusion. It still conveyed negative energy. Chen Fengchen couldn't help but look at Yang Yi. However, although the second verse was still hummed slowly, the meaning of the lyrics had changed. Since I'm still growing up, then I'll struggle bravely and realistically. I've always believed that dreams will eventually bloom into flowers. Growing Up Gradually was about a person who walked into society full of expectations. After encountering setbacks, he experienced confusion. In the end, he chose to face the difficulties bravely and fight bravely. In fact, this song was also describing the feelings of Thousand Miles Chuanshu and the others for the past 2 years. However, here, they turned the various deceptions and restrictions they encountered into common problems that people encountered in society. Chen Fengchen listened to Thousand Miles Chuanshu's ballad very respectfully before revealing a satisfied smile. That's right. Young people should be full of confidence in life. If you don't dare to continue after encountering a small problem, then you're a coward. Director Chen, if I'm not mistaken, you should still be busy editing Drawing Sword. You took the time out of your busy schedule to come to me. Don't tell me you want to talk to me about this? Yang Yi smiled. Which of my works have you taken a fancy to? However, Chen Fengchen surprised Yang Yi. He took out a thin book from his bag, pointed at the title and said, Shawshank's Redemption. Shawshank's Redemption? Yang Yi looked at Chen Fengchen in surprise. He frowned and said, Director Chen, you should be able to see that the story I wrote in this book is aimed at making a movie, right? But you're shooting a TV series. Kid, you're underestimating me. If I can shoot a TV series, why can't I make a movie? Chen Fengchen said angrily. Yang Yi smiled apologetically, but said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Director Chen, that's not what I meant, but you haven't made a movie before, have you? You're a famous TV series director, but there's still a difference between directing a TV series and a movie. You see, it was not a problem for a director who had directed a movie to make a TV series, but it was difficult to estimate the effect of a TV series director making a movie. Yang Yi did not want to use such a classic movie for Chen Fengchen to practice. Chen Fengchen looked at Yang Yi angrily for a while, but suddenly smiled and said with a little pride, To tell you the truth, when I was young, I also made a movie, although it was only a few decades ago. However, this old man won't argue with you. Besides, who told you that I'm going to make a movie based on this book as a director? Chapter 748. Yang Yi was dumbfounded. What does this mean? This is not as a director? Aren't you the director? Yang Yi frowned. However, he reacted in the next second. Looking at Chen Fengchen's white hair and wrinkles on his face, he seemed to have understood something. He asked uncertainly, "Director Chen, you want to be an actor?" Chen Fengchen looked into Yang Yi's eyes and said with slight satisfaction, "Your brain is still very flexible. Which role do you want to play? Fu Rueda?" Yang Yi's frown did not loosen. He did not think that Chen Fengchen was suitable for the role of Fu Rueda. Fu Rueda was considered a supporting actor similar to the male lead. It was not necessary to play Fu Rueda at a certain age. At the very least, one had to be a veteran actor with the acting skills of a best actor in this world. Moreover, Fu Rueda's bones were bigger, which allowed him to be like a fish in water in prison in his early years. Chen Fengchen was not tall, less than 1.7 meters tall. As time passed, he even shrank a little. "I want to play old Buruk," Chen Fengchen said. Buruk was the old prisoner who was affectionately called Old Bu by everyone. He was the manager of the prison library. This role was also quite outstanding, especially the inner torment before and after he was released from prison, as well as the final one-man show, which would leave a deep impression on the audience. Chen Fengchen was still not satisfied with sitting down. He pulled his chair back and stood up. His back was slightly hunched, making him look even more humble. However, when paired with his slightly open mouth and stiff facial muscles, he looked like he had aged 10 years. The old man's left hand seemed to be holding something. He was performing an intangible performance. He walked on the spot, but his steps were unsteady. He looked to the left in confusion, then he staggered slightly to the side. The posture of his legs was as if it had been honed over the years in prison. Yang Yi remembered this scene. Old Bu came out of prison and walked on the street, but he saw the outside world that was completely unfamiliar to him. He saw the streets full of cars. Although he was moving forward, he lost his direction. Chen Fengchen was acting out this scene. Yang Yi didn't know if Chen Fengchen had ever been an actor before, but he guessed that as a director, Chen Fengchen must have tried out a character he liked. Plus, as a director, he knew how to act in order to achieve the desired effect of the script. From the looks of it, the old man's acting wasn't bad. Chen Fengchen's stooped body, his hesitation in the crowd, was vividly reflected in his simple movements and eyes. It gave off the feeling of the original old cloth. "How is it?" After Chen Fengchen finished acting, he sat down and looked at Yang Yi, wanting to get his evaluation. "Director Chen, if I were the director, I would really like to let you try out this role, or even act in other parts. For example, the part where Old Bu asks Andy for worms and feeds the birds. Let's see if the effect is as good," Yang Yi said with a wry smile as he shrugged. When Chen Fengchen heard Yang Yi's words, he immediately acted out the scene for Yang Yi. He even pursed his lips slightly, holding the worm that he had just received, and smiled brightly. Although the old man's face had deep wrinkles from his smile, the corners of his mouth were raised high, and the smile that came from the bottom of his heart gave people an inexplicable sense of comfort and joy, as if it was strongly infectious. Yang Yi helplessly watched the old man's outstanding performance. He explained, "Director Chen, I'm not the director, and I haven't started preparing for this movie yet. Before the real director arrives, we have to confirm the actors first. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" Chen Fengchen put away his humility and revealed an unfathomable smile. "Actually, I'm here today to bring you a director. You think I'm not suitable then? Wu Yayan, what do you think?" Yang Yi was no longer a newbie in the entertainment industry. Wu Yayan was a national treasure director in China. Not only had he won countless awards for his movies in China, but he had also filmed many award-winning blockbusters when he came to America to develop his career 20 years ago. He was a director who was good at using the language of the camera and rich colors to deal with delicate emotional relationships. He could also film artistic effects in commercial films. This was also the reason why his movies often won awards. Yang Yi thought about the movies that Wu Yayan had filmed, and he could basically come to a conclusion. The Shawshank Redemption was the most suitable movie for director Wu to film. "You know director Wu Yayan?" Yang Yi asked in surprise. Of course, he knew that he was being silly when he asked this question without thinking. "Xiaoyang, don't underestimate the name Chen Fengchen," Chen Fengchen said unhappily. "In front of me, Wu Yayan still has to respectfully call me teacher. Do you understand? Chen Fengchen's age and seniority were both higher than Wu Yian's. Although Wu Yian's reputation was indeed higher than Chen Fengchen's and his achievements were greater than Chen Fengchen's, Chen Fengchen was still a person of virtue and prestige. Wu Yian had to respectfully address him as teacher. Director Wu Yian is willing to film my movie? Yang Yi asked. Are you tempted? Chen Fengchen saw Yang Yi's expression and knew that things had become simple. He relaxed a little and proudly teased Yang Yi. Now you see how important your grandpa Chen is, right? Not only can I invite Wu Yian, but I can also help you find many experienced actors with real acting skills. For example, the requirements for the casting of Fu Rueda in your movie are quite high. But let me recommend you one, Li Baogua. What do you think? Chen Fengchen asked. Don't tell me you don't know who Li Baogua is? Yang Yi actually knew this person. Back when he was filming The Fugitive, Xiang Jianglei had instructed Geng Sha to learn from Li Baogua when he was guiding him. Li Baogua could be said to be the Li Xuejian of this world. Although Li Baogua was close to 60 years old, when he was in his 30s, his acting skills were already very good. In a TV series filmed in the 80s, he played a character from 30 years old to 60 years old. And now, when he was close to 60 years old, his acting skills had reached the peak. It could be said that whatever he played, he was exactly like the original character. There was no trace of Li Baogua himself. Xiang Jianglei held Li Baogua in high esteem because of Li Baogua's acting skills. On the other hand, it was because of Li Baogua's professionalism. Being low-key and down-to-earth acting was too rare in this impetuous society. However, Yang Yi heard Chen Fengchen speak as if the casting had already been decided. Li Baogua is getting on in years. Now that he's taking on fewer shows, if you were to invite him, I'm afraid he might not be able to get you a slot. But if I were to tell him in advance, even if Li Baogua doesn't have a slot, he would still squeeze out a slot. After all, Chen Fengchen and Li Baogua had worked together many times. But that wasn't the point. Yang Yi looked at Chen Fengchen suspiciously and asked, Director Chen, have you already discussed it with Director Wu Yian? Why do I feel like you already have a rough candidate for the role? Chen Fengchen suddenly felt a little awkward. He didn't expect Yang Yi to be so sharp. He laughed dryly and said, Aren't I helping you find a role? You tell me, is Li Baogua suitable? If Li Baogua is willing to play the role of Fu Rueda, then it would be perfect. Yang Yi said honestly. But don't we still have to discuss it with Director Wu Yian? And the role of Old Bu? He still has to come back from Europe. He's currently in France for an award. Chen Fengchen saw that Yang Yi had loosened up, so he didn't beat around the bush and said directly, It will probably take another 3 to 5 days. I saw that your book is being eyed by many film companies, and I'm afraid that some unknown director will ruin a good work, so I came to talk to Wu Yian first. If I had such bad eyesight, the copyright of The Shawshank Redemption would have been sold last month. Yang Yi smiled. I still hope that this movie can be handed over to a suitable director. Isn't that fine? I'll help you find a suitable director, and you help me persuade Wu Yian to give me Old Bu. Chen Fengchen said as he winked at him. He wasn't as humble as when he was playing Old Bu. So you haven't talked to director Wu Yian about you playing the role of Old Bu? Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was really trapped by this old man. Chapter 749. Although Chen Fengchen was beating around the bush, Yang Yi had to admit that the old man had studied the book thoroughly and grasped his desire for a perfect interpretation of the work. The plan provided by the old man was indeed the best director and cast combination that Yang Yi could think of. No, it should be said that Yang Yi couldn't even think of it. Without Chen Fengchen's strong connections and background in the entertainment industry, Yang Yi wouldn't have been able to gather a group of veteran actors to make a movie. Chen Fengchen didn't direct the blockbuster work himself, but was so enthusiastic about being Wu Yian's lobbyist. Obviously, he loved the book very much and had deep feelings for the character of Old Bu. Of course, this had to wait for director Wu Yian to come back from France to discuss further. However, Yang Yi also had the same intention. For this kind of instant agreement, it was estimated that only the details of the contract were left. At Springfield Kindergarten, the children were still playing around as usual. Lu Weisha was also smiling brightly as she squeezed in the middle of her friends, as if they had all forgotten about tomorrow's separation. But this was also good. Since they were going to separate, it was better to play happily than to be gloomy all day. Moreover, the happier they were, the better the memories left behind. During lunch, the little girls were still circling Shishi, eagerly waiting for Shishi to take out the food that her father made. Of course, Nan Zhaoyu was also holding his bowl, licking his lips and whispering, "What delicious food did Uncle Yang make today?" After Shishi opened the lunchbox, the dazzling and fragrant dishes made them all mesmerized. This is steamed pork ribs, this is sour, sweet, and super delicious fried meat with pineapple. This is scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and there are green vegetables. My papa said that we should eat more vegetables. Cici happily introduced the vegetables to her friends. This was her favorite part every day, just like Grandma Wang selling melons and praising herself. The little girl's memory was very good. She could remember what her father said when he packed the food for her. When she repeated it to her friends, she could also recite most of the content. At this moment, the expectant and admiring gazes of her friends gave Shishi a great sense of satisfaction. "I want to eat pineapple fried meat. Uncle Yang Yi's pineapple fried meat is the best." Lan Exan bit her small spoon and couldn't wait to cry out, "I want to eat too." Lu Weisha also smiled happily. Looking at their smiling faces, it was as if endless mountain flowers were blooming brilliantly. She also quietly forgot the fact that Lu Weisha would rarely eat such delicious Chinese food in the future. However, among the children, there was one who behaved very strangely. When it was time to eat, Chen Shiyun's brows were furrowed, and she didn't fight with Lan Exan and the rest to get her favorite dishes. Instead, she sat there in a daze and grabbed her small spoon, looking as if she had lost her appetite. When everyone's excitement died down and they started to eat, Shishi realized that something was wrong with her friend. "Shiyun, why aren't you eating?" Shishi asked vaguely with her small mouth full. Chen Shiyun frowned sadly and muttered, "I don't want to eat." "Why don't you want to eat?" "Shishi's father's pineapple fried meat is super delicious. It's sweet and sour. I love it." Lan Exan swallowed the food in her mouth with all her might before replying. Although Chen Shiyun and Lan Exan were usually in a competitive relationship, and the two children often fought for food, now that Chen Shiyun didn't move, Lan Exan's one-man show was meaningless. Lan Exan felt that something was missing. "But my teeth don't feel good." Chen Shiyun bared her front teeth and pointed to one of her teeth. She said unhappily, "My father said that my tooth is going to fall out. It hurts." "It's going to fall out?" Shishi turned pale with fright. "Why is your tooth falling out?" Fortunately, Lu Weisha understood this. She also opened her mouth and revealed her teeth. There was a black hole between the 2 rows of teeth that were still stained with food. "Look, my tooth is falling out. Just like Chen Shiyun." Lu Weisha pointed to her teeth and showed them to everyone. "My father said that an adult's tooth will grow out." Lu Weisha was somewhat lacking in vocabulary and had to switch to Swedish. Fortunately, Shishi helped to translate. "An adult's tooth will grow out?" Shishi curiously stood up from her chair and went closer to take a look. The other children also joined in the fun and came around to watch. This was something new. The children all forgot to eat. "Hey Lu Weisha, your tooth is gone," Shishi asked in confusion. "My mother said that if a tooth falls out, it will grow back." At this time, Chen Shiyun had new knowledge to share with everyone. In the evening, Shishi returned home. At the dinner table, she remembered the strange thing that happened at noon and told her parents about it. "Papa, why did Lu Weisha and Shiyun's teeth fall out?" Shishi asked in confusion. At noon, the 6 of them couldn't figure out the reason. After all, their knowledge was still relatively limited. However, before her parents could answer, the little girl tilted her head and suddenly said, "Is it because they don't brush their teeth properly?" "Papa, I'm obedient and brush my teeth every day, so my teeth won't fall out, right?" "Even if you brush your teeth every day, when you reach a certain age, your teeth will fall out." Murphy told Shishi this cruel reality. This is a rule that every child has to go through. Ah. Shishi looked at her mother in surprise. The little bit of luck in her heart disappeared. Look at your brother, he's about to grow teeth. When he grows teeth, the teeth at this stage are called baby teeth, just like your teeth now. When it's time for you to change your teeth, they will fall out and grow new teeth. But it doesn't matter because after this time, you don't have to change your teeth anymore. The new teeth will accompany you for the rest of your life. Yang Yi explained to his daughter with a smile. But can I not have new teeth? She pursed her lips and said with grievance. My teeth are very beautiful now. Lu Weisha's teeth fall out. They won't be beautiful anymore. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He didn't quite understand. Murphy understood. She chuckled, patted Yang Yi, and said, Look at your daughter. She loves to be beautiful. She's afraid that if one of her teeth falls out, her mouth will leak air and she won't be beautiful anymore. She nodded seriously. I don't want to lose my teeth. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said to Shi, changing teeth is something that everyone has to go through in their growth stage. After you change your teeth, you will be beautiful again. Look at your mother. Her teeth are very neat now, aren't they? So don't be afraid. After you change your teeth, you will find that your teeth will become more beautiful. The most important thing is to pay attention to brushing your teeth. If you brush your teeth clean, they won't fall out easily. When you change your teeth in the future, the new teeth will grow back as soon as possible. Murphy said to Shi. Shi was a little confused when she heard her mother's words. However, the little girl understood a truth. You have to protect your teeth. When they went to bed at night, Yang Yi applied toothpaste for Shi. The little girl looked at him anxiously. She seemed to feel that it was not enough and whispered, More papa, more toothpaste. Chapter 750. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and it was the weekend. The date had also crossed into May. And this weekend, the day to send Lu Weisha off had finally arrived. However, there was still a piece of good news. The letter that Shi had sent across the ocean had finally reached Lu Weisha at the last moment after a long journey of nearly half a month. At least we didn't miss Shi's letter. Yang Yi and his family rushed to Lu Weisha's house and prepared to send them to the airport. David pointed at the letter in Lu Weisha's hands and smiled as he told Yang Yi about this very coincidental matter. They had also received the letter last night. Lu Weisha was happy the whole night because of it. And it had also washed away a lot of the sadness before the departure. In the car, Yang Yi and David sat in the front row. Murphy sat in the middle row with Tong Tong in her arms. The two girls, Shi and Lu Weisha, sat in the last row. They chattered about Shi's letter. The photos and other things were fleeting. Lu Weisha was most interested in Shi's handwritten letter. Like a guessing game, Lu Weisha used Swedish to translate the picture on the letter word by word. Then Shi would tell her whether it was correct or not. Lu Weisha beamed with joy and said, This is me and my father climbing a mountain. Yes, the zoo requires us to climb a mountain. It's very tiring. My father and I are going to Yangcheng to see the zoo, so we don't need to climb a mountain. Shi also replied happily. Is this a kangaroo? I don't know what it means. My father said that this is your father fighting with a kangaroo. Lu Weisha pointed at a picture of a human face, a cross, and a crooked animal picture and asked. It doesn't allow them to fight. David smiled as he turned his head around and said. No. Shi waved her hand and smiled at Lu Weisha. This is. She realized that she didn't know how to say giraffe in Swedish, so she turned her head to ask her father. After a long while, she struggled to explain that she wanted to buy a giraffe plush toy, but her father didn't give it to her. Its neck is very long, very long. Cece was still gesturing as she introduced it. Seeing the two girls chatting enthusiastically in the back of the car, Murphy said to David in English with some regret. In the year that she has been friends with Lu Weisha, she has learned to speak Swedish. Their relationship is very deep. It's a pity that you have to go back to work in Sweden. It will be difficult for the two of them to sit together and talk so happily in the future. I think we should also thank Shi. Not only has Shi learned to speak Swedish, but Lu Weisha has also learned to speak Chinese. This is an amazing improvement. Chinese is the most difficult language to learn. David smiled. Lu Weisha can have so much fun in China and make so many good friends because of Shi. Keep in touch. It's not easy to have a good friend. Yang Yi smiled and said in English. This way, Murphy could understand and wouldn't isolate her. Internet communication is very convenient now. When you have time, you can also let them meet through online video. At the same time, you can also practice their foreign language. That is indeed necessary. David nodded. They arrived at Jiangqing Airport. David and his family had to take a flight to Beijing to transfer to an international flight. However, they had to part eventually. Yang Yi and his family could only send them there. In the departure lounge, Shishi pulled her father's hand. When her father squatted down, she whispered in his ear. Why? Do you want to send them off now? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Shishi nodded. Yang Yi took off his backpack and placed it on the chair. It was mainly filled with spare items for Tong Tong, such as clean diapers, pacifiers, small quilts, baby straps, and so on. However, there was a gift box in the compartment of the backpack today. Yang Yi took it out and turned to David with a smile. When I heard that you were going back to Sweden, Shishi and I started to prepare a farewell gift for you. We made all the handicrafts ourselves, but Shishi also helped and put in a lot of effort. Originally, he wanted to give it to Lu Weisha before Lu Weisha boarded the plane. However, he didn't expect that Shishi couldn't wait and wanted to give it to her friends as soon as they arrived at the airport. However, she didn't have a partner. David looked at Yang Yi in surprise as he took out the gift box and handed it to Shishi. He looked up and couldn't help but laugh. Why did you think of the same thing as me? David took out a box from his luggage and handed it to Lu Weisha. Lu Weisha also said last night that she wanted to give this to Shishi. We were hiding it and prepared to take it out when we parted to make Shishi happy. We didn't expect you to prepare a gift for her too. However, I have to say that this gift for Lu Weisha was not made by us. Yang, I can't compare to your craftsmanship. David laughed. In China, we say that the gift is light but the thought is heavy. No matter what kind of gift it is, it's a very precious souvenir for both of them. Murphy said from the side. Regardless of the adults, Shishi hugged the gift that her father handed to her and gathered together with Lu Weisha. Although the two girls were still looking at each other and giggling, they seemed to have felt that they were about to separate. The two of them squeezed on the same chair and stuck close to each other. It was also a little fun. Lu Weisha, Daddy and I made this for you. It's a panda made of wood. You'll always remember me, right? Shishi accidentally revealed the gift, but the little girl didn't care about anything else. She looked at her friend eagerly, hoping to get her promise. Yes. We'll always be good friends. Lu Weisha nodded vigorously. She handed the gift over and called out to Shishi. This is also for you. It's very beautiful. I like it very much. You'll definitely like it too. Shishi couldn't wait to open the box and saw a brightly colored little wooden horse inside. The horse was completely red, and only the saddle was made up of white, green, yellow, and blue. It was also the color of the saddle that made the little red horse have a special charm. This is our country's most famous Dala wooden horse. It's the best gift for children. When I left Sweden, I gave this little horse to Lu Weisha. She likes it very much. Now she wants to give her favorite toy to Shishi. David explained to Yang Yi and Murphy. It turned out that this palm-sized little wooden horse was Lu Weisha's favorite toy. And now she gave it to Shishi. This revealed the purest feelings of a child, and Murphy couldn't help but be touched, and her eyes turned red. Shishi and the others weren't as touched as the adults. However, Shishi also fell in love with this Dala wooden horse at first sight. She happily held it in her arms and exclaimed excitedly to Lu Weisha, "Wow! It's so beautiful. You have to protect it well. I'm giving it to you." Lu Weisha was actually still a little reluctant, but when she saw Shishi's expression, she said with relief. Yes, yes. Shishi nodded vigorously. It was unknown if she understood this kind of preciousness. Then Lu Weisha also saw the wooden panda that Shishi gave her. Although it didn't have bright colors, Lu Weisha still fell in love with this simple and cute panda. It's very cute, just like a cat. Lu Weisha also held it and couldn't put it down. My papa carved the wood, and then I painted it. Look, its eyes are black and big. Shishi introduced it to Lu Weisha as if she was asking for credit. Although she was wrong, and the panda's eyes were not big at all, Lu Weisha still listened with great interest. The happy time was short, and in the end, they still had to say goodbye. It was time to board the plane. After the two girls hugged, David took Lu Weisha and left. Shishi also gently waved her hand and said goodbye to Lu Weisha. Of course, the little fellow had already started to cry. But it wasn't that intense, perhaps because the joy just now had diluted the sadness at this moment. She just took her father's hand and clung to her father's leg, and didn't cry. Are you okay? Yang Yi saw that Lu Weisha disappeared from his sight, then squatted down next to his daughter, and lovingly wiped the tears on the little girl's face. Do you want Daddy to hug you? Shishi was not like when she was 3 years old. She didn't want to walk and wanted her father to hug her. Now that the little girl has grown up and likes to walk by herself, her father's hug has become much less. Unless she is tired from walking, otherwise, running around freely on the ground is more interesting than being hugged by her father. But now the little girl didn't say a word, pursed her lips, and squeezed into her father's arms. Her head rested on her father's shoulder, showing a strong sense of dependence. Do you feel very uncomfortable now? Yang Yi signaled to Murphy with his eyes, then slowly walked out of the airport with the little girl in his arms. To Yang Yi's surprise, the little girl's tears gradually stopped. She wiped her tears and just whispered to her father, Papa, Lu Weisha and I will always be good friends. Yes. You two have promised many times, and Daddy is listening, Yang Yi said with a smile. Papa. After a while, when they were about to reach the car, Shishi opened her mouth again. Yes, I like the pony Lu Weisha gave me very much, the little girl whispered. Lu Weisha also likes the panda you gave her very much. You two have each other's precious gifts, Yang Yi said. Yes. Although this conversation was somewhat confusing, the little girl seemed to have recovered some of her spirit. The sadness will eventually pass. Chapter 751. The children's recovery speed was faster than Yang Yi had imagined. Perhaps it was because Lu Weisha had called Shishi after returning to Sweden, but Shishi found that there seemed to be no changes in her life. When she went to kindergarten on Monday, the little girl was full of vim and vigor. She was giggling early in the morning, looking forward to seeing her good friends as usual. Today's topic should have been Shishi's letter from Australia, but to Shishi's surprise, everyone's attention was attracted by Chen Shiyun, who had just had her tooth pulled out. Of course, when Shishi saw that Chen Shiyun had a black hole in her tooth like Lu Weisha, she forgot about the incident in Australia. She had already told her friends about it countless times. The little girl's eyes widened, and she went over with Yang Luoqi and the others in surprise. Chen Shiyun wasn't in the same listless state as last week, where her teeth were loose and she couldn't eat or sleep well. The boxing girl had regained her usual vitality. She even proudly opened her mouth, showing off the tooth that had been pulled out for everyone to see. Shishi felt that if she lost her tooth, she wouldn't be pretty anymore. She had been worried about it for a long time and brushed her teeth hard every day. Perhaps every parent would want her to share some of her hard work with their children, who didn't like to brush their teeth. Chen Shiyun didn't have Shishi's concerns at all. She didn't think that losing her tooth would affect her image at all. Instead, she was like a man who saw a scar as a military medal. With this mentality, she showed off to everyone. When she saw a few teachers, she tried hard to raise her head and show off her black hole, as if she was worried that the teachers couldn't see it. But Shiyun, will it hurt a lot? When your tooth was pulled out? Lu Weisha said it was super painful. Shishi asked worriedly. Yeah. Yang Luoqi and Lan Xian, the two little girls who were afraid of pain, echoed. Nan Zhaoyu also drooped his eyebrows and nodded, as if he was experiencing it himself. Chen Shiyun recalled the weekend when her mother took her to the dentist's office for a tooth extraction. Back then, she had cried for her parents and was so scared that she pissed her pants. Before Shishi came, Chen Shiyun was the leader of the children. Although she was now playing with Shishi and the others and had not been the big brother for many years, the little girl still liked to show off and save face. How could he tell such a shameful thing to his friends? Chen Shiyun's image was majestic, brave and fearless. She was worshipped like a hero. She shook her head vigorously and said indifferently, "It doesn't hurt at all." Sure enough, Chen Shiyun saw Nan Zhaoyu and Yang Luoqi's admiring gazes. The little girl straightened her back and was extremely pleased with herself. As for her previous cowardice, she had long thrown it to the back of her mind. Xishi's thirst for knowledge was not over yet. She still held Chen Shiyun's hand worriedly and asked, "What about now? Shiyun, do you feel pain now?" It doesn't hurt at all." The exact same answer, but this time Chen Shiyun did not need to boast, because after the tooth extraction, it did not hurt anymore. However, just as she finished speaking, Chen Shiyun proudly bared her teeth and revealed her military medal. She reached out to touch it and said, "Shishi, look, it doesn't hurt at all." "Can I touch it?" Shishi looked at her eagerly. She did not know why she was a little envious. She was not envious of the tooth falling out, but envious of the hole in Chen Shiyun's tooth that she could put her finger in. Chen Shiyun had raised her head just now. Now that she lowered her head, she saw Shishi's big sparkling eyes full of anticipation. Chen Shiyun did not hesitate much and agreed. "Okay. I want to touch it too," Yang Luoqi said happily. "Me too." Lan Xian was keen to join in the fun. "You have to line up." Yang Luoqi pouted. "Okay." Lan Xian stood behind Yang Luoqi. Shishi was the first. She was about the same height as Chen Shiyun, so she could easily raise her hand and then put her finger into Chen Shiyun's open mouth. "Grind to M," Chen Shiyun said vaguely. Saliva was quickly accumulating in her mouth. Shishi touched the tender flesh of Chen Shiyun's gums. However, there was a thin protrusion on it, as if a small stone was embedded in it. What is this?" Shishi asked in surprise. Chen Shiyun made a whimpering sound that no one could understand. "Hee, I don't know what you are talking about." Shishi was still studying that thing. She pointed with interest, as if she was using her finger to hit a mole. Chen Shiyun finally could not help but grab Shishi's hand and pull it down. Then, with a gulp, she swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "Aya, this is my tooth too." Chen Shiyun could finally speak clearly. She explained eagerly. "My mom said that it will grow back in the future." However, after dealing with Shishi, Chen Shiyun saw that there were still 3 friends waiting in line behind her. She had to continue suffering. "It's my turn." Yang Luoqi raised her hand happily. After all, Chen Shiyun was the big brother. She waved her hand and said generously, "Come on." Yang Huan had classes on Monday, but she only had classes in the afternoon. Therefore, she only rushed back from Min Province this morning after filming until 10 at night. Ding Xiang drove Tyrant to the airport to pick up Yang Huan and Guazi. "Did you have fun filming this time? I heard that you guys went to Jiahe Island to play." Guazi took over driving for Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang and Yang Huan sat in the back. "It was fun and exciting." Yang Huan chuckled. "Don't listen to her, Sister Ding Xiang. We had a narrow escape this time." Guazi said pitifully. "The production crew almost broke us. In the end, I was the one who saved them." Ding Xiang was confused and asked in puzzlement, "What's going on?" Nothing. The production crew made a few real explosions to scare us, but we were still very safe. It was just for the show's effect. The situation was like this, let me tell you." Yang Huan started telling Ding Xiang. As they chatted, they soon arrived at the small building of the coffee shop. Guazi helped to drive the car into the backyard. Of course, this was where the girls lived. In order not to get his legs broken by Yang Yi, Guazi stopped the car and quickly grabbed his bag to leave. Oh right. Guazi remembered something. He turned around and took out a small box from his bag. He handed it to Ding Xiang and smiled. "Sister Ding Xiang, this is a souvenir we saw on Jiahe Island. It's for you." He made it sound like he had bought many of them. "Wow, when did you buy it? Why haven't I seen it before?" Yang Huan's eyes lit up and she snatched it from Ding Xiang's hands. She looked into the box from the transparent side and saw that it was a piece of art made purely of seashells. There were 2 birds standing on a reef. It was delicately made. One of the birds was tilting its head and looking at its companion. The expression drawn by the brush was very lifelike. I saw it when I got out of the car to do my mission. I thought it looked good, so I bought it. Guozi stared at the box that Yang Huan snatched away and said, After I bought it, I asked my cameraman to help me carry it. Is there anything else? Yang Huan said in annoyance. I forgot to buy a souvenir for my brother. I think he would like to collect art pieces like this. Yang Huan said this because of Guozi's tone and his nonchalant attitude when he passed it to Ding Xiang. It seemed like he had bought a lot. Chapter 752. Yang Huan extended her hand and looked at Guozi. She had no intention of asking for it for herself. She was not a collector anyway. Moreover, Ding Xiang had the souvenir at home, and Yang Huan could see it. Why should she get one for herself? She simply wanted to give one to Yang Yi. Otherwise, Yang Yi might find out that Guozi had bought a souvenir for Ding Xiang and blame her for being heartless. Guozi was troubled. It was not that he did not want to give one to Yang Huan, but he really did not have any left. He had only bought one for Ding Xiang. When he bought it, all he could think about was Ding Xiang, so he did not buy another one. He had said it so casually just now because he was worried that Ding Xiang would not accept it if she heard that he had bought it for her. I don't have much left. The rest, I still have to give away. Why don't you make a call and see if the crew is still in Min Province? Guozi said vaguely, looking troubled. Ding Xiang saw that he was troubled and said, Huan, why don't you give this to Brother Yang? I'm fine with it. I've received Xiaoguo's kindness. However, Yang Huan was suspicious. Her bright eyes glanced at the backpack that Xiaoguo was holding, and she started thinking quickly. She had to admit that participating in the ultimate challenge was indeed a training exercise. Even a girl as carefree as Yang Huan was now thinking clearly. She remembered that Xiaoguo's backpack did not have much space. Apart from the things he had brought with him, there was only enough space for one box. Then why was he holding an empty backpack? If he really had it, he would have put it in his luggage. Moreover, she did not intend to take his things. Why was he so nervous? Perhaps Yang Huan would not have been able to come up with any other plan. However, when it came to gossip, women were Sherlock. Yang Huan recalled some of Guozi's strange actions after Ding Xiang came back this month. Then, she thought about how Guozi had pretended to be nonchalant when he handed Ding Xiang an art piece. A bolt of lightning flashed across Yang Huan's mind. F***CK. Yang Huan's eyes lit up like a few kilowatt light bulbs. Cough. Yang Huan saw through her, but did not expose her. She put on a serious expression, stuffed the shell back into Ding Xiang's hands, and said calmly, Forget it. How can I accept Sister Ding Xiang's gift? At most, I'll pick another one for my brother during the next recording. He didn't say anything about it in the past when he didn't have any souvenirs. Ding Xiang could only put it away. Just as Guozi was about to leave, Ding Xiang remembered something. She turned around and called out to him, Xiao Guozi, don't forget to go for a run at 8:30 p.m. Guozi wailed as usual, and then nodded dejectedly. In fact, this guy's weight loss was pretty good. Even if he hadn't slimmed down, the muscles on his body had become a lot stronger. In these 2 months, his weight had also dropped by more than 10 pounds. Night jogging had become a habit of his, and it was something he looked forward to. After all, he could be alone with Ding Xiang. However, this guy was still very lazy. He needed Ding Xiang's supervision, or he would act shamelessly like a naughty kid. Yang Huan stood aside, her eyes rolling back and forth between Guozi and Ding Xiang. No one knew what she was thinking. Ding Xiang and Yang Huan went upstairs. While Yang Huan was packing her clothes, Ding Xiang walked in and out with the shell artwork given by Guozi. Huan, where should I put it? Ding Xiang couldn't make up her mind. Put it in your room, Yang Huan said without raising her head. Ding Xiang said, It's not impossible to put it in my room, but we usually stay in the living room. It's a pity to put it in my room. Yang Huan suddenly raised her head and looked at Ding Xiang. She rolled her eyes and said, Sister Ding Xiang, I see that you like it very much. Ding Xiang didn't understand the meaning of Yang Huan's words. She nodded honestly and said with a smile, I think it's pretty. Look at the two birds. One bent its head and the other bent its ear. They look like they're whispering to each other. How cute. Yang Huan wanted to tell Ding Xiang that there was an idiom called pairs are pairs. However, she found that Ding Xiang didn't seem to know about Guozi's abnormality, so she didn't expose her rashly. She was afraid that her interference would ruin the plan. Sister Ding Xiang, you can put it in the living room. Put it next to the TV cabinet in the living room. If you sit there and do your homework, you can see it. Yang Huan suggested to Ding Xiang. In the evening, Yang Huan came back from class and sat with Ding Xiang to read a book. Sister Ding Xiang, how did you spend your time in Shanghai? Are you going to shoot a movie with Xiaoguo? Yang Huan couldn't help but ask. Haven't you asked this question before? Ding Xiang was confused. She remembered clearly that she had told Yang Huan about her experience in Shanghai many times. Sigh, my memory isn't as good as yours. Yang Huan chuckled. Tell me more. Ding Xiang didn't think too much and told Yang Huan. It's not that I have to follow him to the set, but he's the main lead. It's inconvenient if he doesn't have a manager or an assistant by his side. So if I don't have anything else to do, I try to go. However, I don't have much to do. Sometimes, I'll help him buy some drinks to drink with the other actors and directors. Under Yang Huan's guidance, Ding Xiang told some stories that had happened on the set. Or accidents. One time they were filming an action scene. When Xiaoguo turned around, his right thumb poked the car and twisted it. He didn't say anything, but his forehead was sweating. It was cold at the time, and I thought it was strange. Later, I saw his hand behind his back shaking, and I knew he had twisted it. After that, I asked him why he didn't tell the director that he had to take a break. Xiaoguo said that if I took a break, the scene wouldn't be able to continue, and the set would go to waste. Furthermore, this was just a small matter. I often asked for leave to film, and the crew allowed it. Now, I'm dragging down the progress because of this small matter, and I feel bad about it. Ding Xiang said all this in the hope that Xiaoguo's concentration during filming could influence Yang Huan, so that she could also work hard to be a good actress. However, Yang Huan's attention wasn't on this. She looked at Ding Xiang's face and asked with a smile, how did you treat Xiaoguo's broken finger? I didn't have a choice back then. When I went back, I saw that his finger was swollen, and it was in great pain. So, I bought some herbs from a Chinese medicine shop, and made him some medicine that is specially made in our village. He recovered after applying it for 2 days, Ding Xiang said simply. He twisted his finger, and it's his right hand. How did you apply the medicine? Yang Huan pretended to be confused. I was the one who applied it, of course. I was the one who made the medicine. If I didn't do it, how would he know? Ding Xiang smiled. So that was the case. Yang Huan smiled along with Ding Xiang, and her smile was meaningful. She finally understood how Guozi developed his feelings for Ding Xiang. It was all because of Ding Xiang's meticulous care for Guozi in Shanghai, which made him fall in love with her. Of course, Yang Huan wasn't completely right, but it was more or less the case. After chatting with Yang Huan for a while, Ding Xiang raised her head and looked at the time. It's almost time. I'll bring Xiaoguo for a jog. Do you want to come? It's fine. You guys can go. I have martial arts practice every morning, and I don't need to lose weight. Yang Huan immediately waved her hand. Since she knew about it, she didn't want to be a third wheel. Chapter 753. Zhang Shirley was a reporter from the New Entertainment Morning Post. That's right, he was a serious entertainment reporter. He usually attended the press conferences of some celebrities and management companies. He didn't have to do the hard work of a paparazzi like when he first debuted. Today, Zhang Shirley flew to Jiangqing from Guangdong province to attend the press conference of a certain management company in the afternoon. However, at the airport, he unexpectedly saw a low-key figure. It was indeed low-key. The person didn't have a big windbreaker, cap, or mask. Generally, he wouldn't attract the attention of reporters. Moreover, his ordinary face and old-fashioned large-framed glasses made him look like a middle-aged businessman returning from a business trip. Which reporter would pay too much attention to businessmen at the airport? If Zhang Shirley hadn't seen the news of the French Film Festival in the newspaper when he was waiting for the plane in Guangdong province, he probably would have missed the big fish like the other reporters. Isn't this director Wu Yayan? Zhang Shirley's eyes lit up. He was afraid that he would recognize the wrong person, so he secretly walked to the front and pretended to walk past the other person. This time, when Zhang Shirley looked at his face, he could basically confirm that this person was director Wu Yian. Unless there was a second face like this in the world, an old reporter like Zhang Shirley couldn't recognize the wrong person. Wasn't Wu Yian, an international director, still a judge in France? Why did he suddenly come to Jiangcheng? Zhang Shirley quickly checked with his phone and confirmed that Wu Yian wasn't from Jiangcheng and had nothing to do with Jiangcheng. He guessed that this was probably going to be big news. Zhang Shirley was ecstatic. He didn't care about going to the hotel first, but quietly followed behind Wu Yian. The slightly troublesome thing was that the camera was still in the suitcase. He couldn't take it out now. He could only secretly take out his phone and take 2 photos of Wu Yian's back. The image quality wasn't very good, but there was nothing he could do. After a while, Zhang Shirley saw 2 people coming to pick him up. It was a man and a woman. He didn't know any familiar faces. The man seemed to be a handyman. At first, he was holding a sign with Mr. Wu written on it. Later, he helped with the luggage. The woman, on the other hand, looked more like a manager. She started chatting with Wu Yian. Zhang Shirley only cared about taking a photo. The other party started to move again. After leaving the airport, Wu Yian got into a nanny van on the side of the road where cars were coming and going. Zhang Shirley didn't even bother to take photos. He hurriedly waved his hand and flagged down an empty taxi. "Follow that car. The license plate number is..." Zhang Shirley said anxiously as he looked at the rear of the minivan that was gradually disappearing from the car window. Okay. The taxi driver quickly started the car and followed him. Zhang Shirley finally had the time to take out his DSLR from his suitcase and started taking pictures of the van. "Are you a reporter?" The driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror and asked. Zhang Shirley replied casually, "Oh yes. Master, you really have sharp eyes." In fact, he was just being polite, but the driver's chatterbox had been opened. The driver even said somewhat proudly, Generally, there are 3 situations when people get on a car and want to follow others. Police, paparazzi, but they usually call themselves reporters. From the camera you took out, you are the second type." "What's the third situation?" Zhang Shirley asked curiously. "Catch them in the act. But usually, there's no need to take a plane to catch an adulterer. Moreover, I don't see you flustered and exasperated." The driver smiled ambiguously. Zhang Shirley laughed awkwardly but didn't lose his politeness. "Actually, I'm not a paparazzi, I'm a proper reporter. It's just that this situation is special." Zhang Shirley tried to explain. "It's okay, I've hired a lot of reporters. Anyway, you're willing to pay, so let's have a good cooperation. Am I right? Why don't I rent this car to you for the day?" The driver flattered Zhang Shirley without revealing anything. Sure. We'll see how it goes later. Maybe I'll have to take your car." Zhang Shirley didn't say anything definite. He didn't expect that the following would take a long time. From Binhai to Tingshan district, the opposite minivan drove for more than an hour, and he also followed for more than an hour. On the way, he even had time to call back to report to the chief editor of the newspaper. When the chief editor heard that there was news about Wu Yian, he decisively asked him to skip the scheduled press conference of a management company. Following the international director was more important. Finally, they arrived at their destination. The car stopped in front of a building, and Zhang Shirley's taxi also stopped on the opposite side of the road. Zhang Shirley didn't get out of the car, but took out his camera to take pictures. "Is this Yang Yi?" Zhang Shirley finally saw a familiar face, but he muttered uncertainly. "Yes, it's Yang Yi." The taxi driver also looked out of the window curiously. When he saw Yang Yi's appearance, he laughed. "I remember now, there's only one big entertainment company in Tingshan district. It was reported in the news before that big stars like Dan Hongkue, Jie Yuchen, and Yuan Yan have all been here. This is Yang Yi's company." Zhang Shirley ignored the driver and pressed the shutter furiously. It wasn't until Yang Yi and Wu Yian went upstairs that he came back to his senses. Because he had to keep an eye on them, he really did rent this taxi for the day. Since he had nothing to do, he chatted with the driver. Why do you say that there's only one big entertainment company in the whole district? Zhang Shirley asked, puzzled. Because there are many entertainment companies in the coastal area. Tingshan district is mostly barren. Oh, there's also a university town, and the transportation is not as convenient as the coastal area. Who would open an entertainment company in such a place? The driver laughed. But Yang Yi is a special case. The news said that he doesn't care about fame and fortune. He likes to keep a low profile, so it's reasonable that he opened it here. But I quite like Yang Yi. His songs are good, and his Soldier Assault, and The Ultimate Challenge, are also very good. The driver said proudly. Jiangqing is a place with clean water, and it's full of talents. However, Yang Yi wasn't a native of Jiangqing. For the sake of today's friendly stalking trip, Zhang Shirley didn't expose him. Just as he was chatting with the driver, another car drove over. Zhang Shirley, who had been looking outside vigilantly, saw Yang Yi coming down from upstairs to pick someone up. The person who got out of the car? Isn't that Chen Fengchen? Zhang Shirley pressed the shutter and thought in confusion. What's going on? Two famous directors, Wu Yian and Chen Fengchen, are appearing in Yang Yi's company at the same time? Big news, no doubt. But what kind of big news was this? Zhang Shirley felt a headache coming on. If it was just Wu Yian and Yang Yi, he could make up a big news story, such as Wu Yian and Yang Yi working together to make a big movie. But Chen Fengchen was also there. Two directors, one making movies, the other making TV series. What were the two of them doing together? This news, even if it was made up, the audience wouldn't believe it. Of course, Zhang Shirley kept this question to himself. He didn't tell the driver, but continued to chat with him. As they chatted, the conversation returned to the difference between paparazzi and reporters. Zhang Shirley tried his best to explain that he was a reporter, a normal reporter. Forget it. If you're a normal reporter, why do you have to take photos secretly like paparazzi? And they're all men. What kind of scandals can they create? Why don't you just interview them openly? The driver complained. His words awakened the dreamer. Zhang Shirley patted his head. That's right. When they come out, why don't I just interview them directly? Why do I have to make up a story? Chapter 754. Wu Yian to work with genius Yang Yi to finalize a new movie, with Chen Fengchen helping to pull the strings. The next day, the news from New Entertainment Morning Post blew up everyone's minds. Wu Yian's influence was undeniable. As an international director, the news quickly topped the headlines of major websites and micro-broadcasting's trending searches. Zhang Shirley did manage to interview Wu Yian and Yang Yi later. Although they were vague and unwilling to reveal more information, Zhang Shirley could confirm that Wu Yian and Yang Yi were indeed discussing a movie project. As for which book Yang Yi was going to film, Zhang Shirley was unable to find out. When Zhang Shirley asked Chen Fengchen about the purpose of his appearance, the old man slyly said, "Take a guess." Zhang Shirley would never have guessed that the famous director Chen Fengchen was there to play a small supporting role. Therefore, he could only guess that Chen Fengchen was the middleman who helped Wu Yian and Yang Yi get to know each other based on their past collaborations. As soon as the news came out, it attracted the attention of the entire entertainment industry. Yang Yi had been doing well in the entertainment industry for the past 2 years, especially this year. Yang Yi had exploded in the film and TV industry. The Fugitive, which he wrote and acted as the male lead, was actually able to earn 460 million yuan at the box office during the off-season. Moreover, with the help of its good reputation, the energy that erupted from it stunned those who had previously looked down on the film. The 2 shows that Chen Fengchen worked with him on were also very exciting. Soldier's Assault was broadcast at the beginning of the year. Due to the advantage of Central TV's platform, it quickly became popular and became a spring hit that people all over the country were talking about. Moreover, if there were no stronger competitors, the show would basically be the champion of the year's Central TV ratings. Drawing Sword, which was expected to be broadcast at the beginning of next year, was also very popular. As early as when it was being filmed, it had already garnered a lot of attention. It could be said that it was a hit before it was broadcast. Not to mention, the upcoming popular TV series Prison Break was also produced by Yang Yi. The fact that Yang Yi was so popular in the United States showed that Yang Yi's capabilities were not to be underestimated. Now that the internationally renowned director Wu Yian was going to work with Yang Yi, there was no need to guess that this would be a blockbuster film. Even if it failed at the box office, it would still attract enough attention in the early stages. Therefore, after hearing the news, all the major entertainment companies were ready to make a move. They all showed their abilities and approached Wu Yian and Yang Yi. Mo Xiaozhuan's phone was almost exploding with calls. She didn't know how many agents wanted to push their artists over, trying to get a share of the action and gain popularity. Of course, they were destined to be disappointed. Although Yang Yi and Wu Yian had not finished their discussion, he had basically acknowledged Wu Yian's strength, so the casting would be decided by Wu Yian. This movie was destined to win an award. Wu Yian would not give face to those entertainment companies. He would rather use good actors who were not famous than accept any popular fresh meat with no acting skills. Of course, this was all for later. The Shawshank Redemption had come to an end for the time being. Yang Yi and Wu Yian's negotiation was only left with the details, so Yang Yi handed it over to the professional negotiation team he had placed in Sahara Publishing to continue the discussion with Wu Yian. Time passed quickly, and it was the middle of May. In between, other than Yang Yi and Murphy making a trip to Shanghai to record a show, nothing major happened. Today was another Saturday. Lance Haokai had finally returned from Jinling City in triumph. Over at Jinling City, although the work efficiency of the government was average, and some leaders liked to put on a show, fortunately, there were no problems in the end. Yang Yi saw the grand ceremony where Lance Haokai signed the contract with the mayor of Jinling City from the news. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. After Lance Haokai returned to Jiangcheng, he rushed over to Yang Yi's place without stopping. He lay comfortably on the sofa in Yang Yi's study room and smiled at Yang Yi. It's been hard on you. Good things come with setbacks. Being able to get this piece of land, a huge stone in my heart, has finally been lifted. Yang Yi sighed. Yang Yi was not exaggerating. In fact, the land was secondary. With money, he was not worried about not being able to buy the construction land for the amusement park. However, there was only one piece of land in the ancestral hall of the Yang family. If something happened in the next 6 months and he was unable to buy it, there would be a hurdle in his heart that he would not be able to cross. Lance Haokai did not think so much. He waved his hand and said indifferently, "Actually, it was the officials of Jinling City who wanted to get political achievements. There were many things to do. A piece of land that no one wanted delayed us for 4 to 5 months. If it was in Jiangcheng, we could have signed the contract 2 months ago. There was no need to wait until now. You didn't leave any evidence for others to use against you in your connections, right? We can't build an amusement park on this piece of land in the future. It can't be sealed off halfway," Yang Yi said with a smile. Lance Haokai waved his hand and said calmly, "Eating, giving gifts, these small things are done quite often. As for other big things, you can rest assured that we won't be implicated. Besides, we bought a piece of land that no one wants." If it wasn't for the fact that the people of Jinling City wanted to show their faces in the province, the people of Wuqing County would have given the land to us so that we could develop it earlier and revitalize the economy there. Why would we need to do anything illegal? Boss Lan was a big shot in the Jiangnan real estate industry. He had seen his fair share of storms and knew his limits. If he said there was no problem, then there should be no problem. "Right, when do you plan to start this amusement park?" Lance Haokai asked curiously. "It's a matter of money now. The amusement park is a bottomless pit. With the amount of liquid capital I have now, it won't be enough unless I sell the shares of Sahara." Yang Yi looked deeply at Lance Haokai and said, "However, I feel that even if I wanted to sell it, you wouldn't have that much liquid capital, right? Why do you want to sell it? Has Sahara's development reached a bottleneck?" Lance Haokai frowned. He had seen the financial reports of Sahara's online shopping mall. It was still developing rapidly. On one hand, it had won the battle for market share. On the other hand, with the development of the mobile internet and the improvement of people's living standards, the scale of the online shopping industry was also expanding. However, Lance Haokai was not confident. He did not have the emperor's confidence in the internet industry like he did in the real estate industry. If it wasn't for Yang Yi bringing him into the industry, he would still be an outsider. It's far from a bottleneck. Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, as for why I want to sell it, when I talked to you last year, didn't I already tell you that I wanted to pool my funds to build this amusement park? Also, we agreed that if you help me get this piece of land, within 5 years, if I sell the shares of Sahara's online shopping mall, will you have the priority to buy it? That was what they had agreed on back then. But Lan Xiaokai's thinking was completely different from last year. Chapter 755. When Lan Xiaokai came to visit Yang Yi, the three of them came together to eat and drink. After eating and drinking to their fill, he went to the study with Yang Yi to discuss business matters. While they were chatting, Wu Jingjing and Murphy were playing with Tong Tong in the living room. Tong Tong, who was almost 6 months old, was very lively. He was not satisfied with being carried in his mother's arms or lying on the bed in boredom. As long as he was awake, the little guy was very energetic. He would turn over on his own and even crawl for a short distance. Of course, if he could be supported by his father or mother and stagger on the ground for a few steps, he would be even happier. Now Murphy supported him by his armpits and let him stand on her knees. He could not stand steadily. However, it was obvious that Tong Tong liked this position. Under his mother's protection, he trembled as he put his 2 white and tender chubby legs together and happily bent his knees to jump up and down. It could not be said that he was jumping in the true sense, because the strength of little Momo's legs was not enough for him to jump. However, the little guy still happily kicked his 2 little feet and stepped on his mother's legs. With a little more strength, he jumped again and then curled up and kept repeating, "Ayo, not bad, not bad. You can do it." Wu Jingjing watched from the side and was full of joy. She could not stop smiling as she said to Tong Tong. Murphy looked at Tong Tong with a smile. Perhaps the little guy was a little tired from jumping, so he stopped to rest for a while. He raised his little head and looked at his mother with his round eyes. He could not help but open his little mouth and giggle. "Ayo, Tong Tong is so cute. Look at his smile, he even has dimples." Wu Jingjing said to Murphy with a smile. She doesn't have dimples, right? Yes, she doesn't, but her brother does. Actually, Yang Yi also has dimples when he smiles, but they are very shallow. If you don't look carefully, you won't be able to see them. That's why I told him that his dimples are only passed down to males, not females. Murphy laughed. That's great. When mommy grows up, I don't know how many girls will fall for his dimples when he smiles. Wu Jingjing smiled and reached out to touch Tong Tong's chubby cheeks. It was a baby's Tong Tong. Now his chubby cheeks were the most fun to touch. Tong was stunned for a moment when his cheeks were touched. He turned his head and looked at Wu Jingjing for a long time. She went upstairs to the master bedroom to play. She also showed Lan Xian the little red horse that Lu Weisha gave her. This is so beautiful. Lan Xian held the little red horse and couldn't bear to put it down. She said enviously, "Why didn't Lu Weisha give it to me?" There was nothing special about the little red horse. It was just a piece of wood, but its color was brighter. There's only one Lu Weisha. She helped to explain. She gave it to me, so it's gone. She doesn't have it anymore. But I want it too. Lan Xian muttered, "I like it." She was in a dilemma for a while, but fortunately, she thought of her omnipotent father. Her eyes lit up and she said, "You want it too? Xian, I'll ask my papa to make one for you, okay?" Lan Xian thought it was a good idea. She was happy and asked curiously, "Can your father make this little horse?" "I'll go and ask." Cece giggled and got up from the ground to look for her father. "I'll go too." Lan Xian giggled and ran with Shishi in the house. At this moment in the study, Yang Yi and Lan Xiaokai were talking about the shares of Sahara Online Mall. However, Lan Xiaokai's idea had changed a lot from last year, especially when he saw the products of Yang Yi's other company, Micro Broadcasting, became popular after the Spring Festival. He had a deep understanding of Yang Yi's vision in the internet industry. Lan Xiaokai waved his hand and said, No, Yang Yi, I don't want your shares. If you weren't in Sahara, I wouldn't have the confidence to continue investing in Sahara Online Mall. Yang Yi looked at Lan Zhaokai doubtfully and said, if you take the shares of Sahara, they will only appreciate in the future. It is impossible for them to depreciate. Even if you hold them for a long time after the listing, you will still make a profit. Don't you believe in my judgment? If I sell the shares to you, will I cheat you? Then I earn money from my brother? Do you think I will feel guilty? Lan Zhaokai asked with a smile. You make money without losing money, and I take advantage of other people's difficulties to earn it for myself. Is this what a brother would do? How can you think like that? I don't want the goodies to flow into other people's fields. I also need the funds to build an amusement park. It's better to sell it to you than to others. Besides, didn't we agree at that time? You help me get the land, and I will sell my shares to you in a few years. Yang Yi would not sell it now, but he did have plans to free up his hands and gather funds for the amusement park. Alright, let's talk about it one by one. I helped you get the land in Wu County, and I also bought some of it, right? Lan Zhaokai smiled proudly. Also, I have a share in your amusement park, right? Yang Yi nodded. Then isn't it fine? Me helping you to buy this land is a good thing that will benefit both of us. We are in a cooperative relationship, so why do we need to talk about so many conditions? Lan Zhaokai shrugged. You can keep the shares of Sahara Online Mall. You don't need to sell them to me at a low price. But if you really think that this company has reached its peak, then it's time to sell your shares. We will sell them together. Lan Zhaokai did not have any advantages when it came to investing in the internet. But he was a person who knew his limits and knew how to use people wisely. Yang Yi looked at Lan Zhaokai in surprise and said, don't regret it. My 34% shares of Sahara Online Mall will not be as simple as a few billion when it gets listed in the future. Lan Zhaokai shook his head and smiled. You don't have to earn all the money for yourself. If there is money, everyone will earn it. It is more important to have a long-term income. Yang Yi shook his head lightly. He felt that Lan Zhaokai might have made a wrong choice. Even he could not predict the limits of Sahara Online Mall. Of course, following Yang Yi and other investments was not necessarily a bad thing. For example, the amusement park. In Feng Yu's previous life, Disney had swallowed up Marvel, Lucas, Fox, and other big companies. However, Yang Yi might not be able to build an amusement park on such a large scale. He wasn't that ambitious. No matter what, this was Lan Zhaokai's choice. But if I don't sell my shares, where will I get the money to build the amusement park? The amusement park needs a lot of money. Yang Yi spread his hands and said, in the end, won't I have to sell my shares? Brother Yang, you don't know anything about business. How did you earn so much money? Lan Zhaokai helplessly covered his forehead and said, don't you know that there is a place in the world where you can gain something without risking anything? It's called a bank. Don't you know that you can use your shares and land to loan a lot of money as early investment? And you don't know that building an amusement park is a big project. You can do it in several phases. In this way, won't the financial pressure be a lot less? In this way, after Sahara is listed, we only need to cash out a small part of the shares, and the virtuous cycle of funds can be guaranteed. Yang Yi might have heard of these concepts separately, but if he were to operate them, he might not even be able to recall them. After all, he was not a business tycoon in his previous life. Lan Zhaokai saw that Yang Yi was suddenly enlightened. He smiled proudly. See, you really need a partner like me. In terms of investment, I am not as good as you. But in terms of capital operation, Brother Yang, I have a lot of experience. As they were talking, suddenly, there was a knock on the door of the study. Chapter 756. In fact, the soundproofing effect of the study's door was not that good. After Shi and Lan Xian knocked on the door, Yang Yi and the others stopped their discussion. At this time, the two little girls were giggling outside, and their laughter could be heard through the study's door. Who is it? Yang Yi asked even though he already knew the answer. Lan Zhaokai smiled and said to Yang Yi, oh, not bad. They even know how to knock on the door. Xian is at home. She never knocks on the door when she goes to any room. At this time, Shi said in a muffled voice, not knowing if she was covering her mouth or pinching her nose. She said, "I'm Mom." Yang Yi and Lan Hao Kai were amused when they heard that. The two little girls were still pretending. Yang Yi pretended not to know and asked, "Your mom? What about the other one? I heard two people knocking on the door." "Hee, I'm also Mom. I'm X&R's mom," Lan Xian also said. The little girl's voice was relatively loud, and her voice was very clear. "Oh, X&R, you didn't pretend to be your mom's voice." Shishi's voice was a little anxious. Yang Yi and Lan Hao Kai looked at each other and smiled. He shook his head, got up, and went to open the door. The two little girls were outside the door. Their little heads were together, and they were discussing a remedy strategy. Suddenly, the door opened, and a pair of long legs appeared in front of them. Shishi and Lan Xian subconsciously looked up, and saw Yang Yi looking down at them with a smile. The two little girls were suddenly shocked. They screamed and were excited as if they had been caught red-handed. Of course, they grabbed each other guiltily and giggled. "What are you doing? You don't even know how to pretend to be a mother." Yang Yi shook his head and laughed. Shishi looked at Lan Xian, as if she was looking at the person who didn't look like her father. "Alas, it's all X&R's fault. Papa found out." "Why are you looking at X&R?" Yang Yi couldn't help laughing and said, "Dad is talking about you. Who would claim to be his mother? Doesn't your mother have a name?" Shishi and X&R both stuck out their tongues in embarrassment. Shishi blinked her bright eyes and said with a smile, "My mom is Murphy. I also know my mother's name. Her name is Wu Jingjing." Lan Xian also replied. Now in front of Yang Yi, the two little girls showed an obedient look. Of course, when Yang Yi turned around later, they would play wildly again. "Why are you looking for Dad?" Yang Yi teased them for a while and finally returned to the main topic. "Papa," X&R said that she also wants a little red horse, but Lu Weisha only has one. If she gives it to me, there will be no more. Shishi hasn't learned how to tell a story succinctly and comprehensively. She said a lot at once. "I want one too. This is very beautiful." Lan Xian added, pointing to the Dala Trojan horse that Shishi was holding. "This horse is Swedish, right? I think I've seen it before." Lan Zhoukai glanced at it and said, "Yes, Lu Weisha is Swedish." Yang Yi explained to Lan Zhoukai. In fact, Lan Zhoukai also knew about it before, and he had also met David before. It was just that he was forgetful, so he didn't remember it for a while. "Papa, can you make a little red horse for X&R?" Shishi looked at her father expectantly. "I want the same one as Shishi. Then I can have a little red horse like Shishi." Lan Xian jumped on the side and said excitedly, "X&R, how can you disturb your Uncle Yang with this kind of thing?" Lan Zhoukai was now talking about important things with Yang Yi. He subconsciously put Yang Yi's position at the same level as his, so he felt that it was a little inappropriate. He said in a slightly reproachful tone, "When we go back, I'll ask someone to buy it for you from Sweden." Lan Xian was stunned for a moment. She was a little confused and didn't know how to choose. Should she buy a new one or ask Shishi's father to make a new one for her? Both seemed to be equally good. "No, you don't have to go through so much trouble." Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand to Lan Zhoukai and said, "It's just a palm-sized Dala Trojan horse. I can make it in 2 or 3 days. You ask someone to go to Sweden to buy it, but you don't even know where to buy it. How easy is it for me to make one?" Yang Yi said that he had a lot of time. He had an extra day to buy the special paint. Otherwise, this kind of small Trojan horse that didn't require much craftsmanship would be much easier to carve than a chubby panda. Since Yang Yi said so, Lan Zhoukai shook his head helplessly and didn't interfere anymore. Shishi took Lan Xian's little hand and couldn't wait to translate for her little friend. "My papa said that you'll have a little red horse soon." Lan Xian was so happy that she stretched out her arms to Yang Yi. Yang Yi thought that Lan Xian wanted him to hug her, so he squatted down. Unexpectedly, Lan Xian hugged Yang Yi's neck and kissed him on the cheek. She said happily, "I like Uncle Yang Yi the most." After saying that, the little girl turned around and ran out. Although she was a little fat, she was still very agile. Shishi shouted and chased after her. From afar, the laughter of the two little girls could be heard. "Hee hee, you kissed my papa. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. He turned to look at Lan Zhoukai and said with a smile, "Big brother Lan, if you don't spend more time with Xian, who knows when I'll kidnap her? I'm busy and don't have time to accompany Xian. Isn't it all because of your land?" Lan Zhoukai rolled his eyes. His heart was filled with an indignant desire to complain. He said, "Do you think everyone is like you? How could he easily earn billions by staying at home? It's hard to do business these days. If I don't run around outside, how can I support my family?" Indeed, he had to complain. Lan Zhoukai thought about business all day. He also had to make connections everywhere. He was so busy that he was about to lose weight. In the end, he didn't even earn as much money as this guy who did nothing all day. He just stayed at home to play with his children, raise cats and dogs, carve and make handicrafts. In comparison, Lan Zhoukai's stomach was full of grievances and bitter tears. Of course, joking was just joking. Yang Yi was still grateful to Lan Zhoukai from the bottom of his heart. He smiled and patted Lan Zhoukai on the shoulder. He said, "All right, I know it's been hard on you. I won't take Xian away, and will even take care of her for you. If you don't have time, you can send her to my house and let the two little sisters play together. At my house, you don't have to worry about them going hungry." Lan Zhoukai rubbed his chin and said, "These are small matters. But speaking of which, since I'm back, shouldn't we continue looking at those private schools and find a good school for Xian and Shishi? I've done some research during this time, but it seems that Huijia Primary School is still the best." Yang Yi got up and added some hot water to the teapot. He said, "And there's a problem. Shishi and Xian often play with Chen Shiyin, Qiqi and Nanjiaoyu. These children also said in private that they want to continue to go to school together." This topic originated from the question Lan Zhoukai asked Shishi and Lan Xian if they wanted to go to primary school together. The two little girls remembered it very clearly. When they talked about it in kindergarten, the other three children naturally didn't want to be separated. Originally, there was still Lu Weisha, but Lu Weisha came back to China. Yang Yi didn't want his daughter to be sad again. Naturally, he also hoped that this group of children, who had a pure and strong friendship, could grow up together. "I've talked to several parents. Huijia Primary School is the best choice," Yang Yi said to Lan Zhoukai. "The tuition of other private schools is a big problem. Think about Nan Zhaoyu's family situation. Although Nanny Yun is in good health, his family's income can't be compared to ours. They can still accept the tuition of Huijia Primary School. In addition, Qiqi's father is in the education industry. He has learned that the overall quality of the children in Huijia Primary School is indeed higher than the children in other schools." Lan Zhoukai didn't care about these. He only cared about whether Lan Xian could go to school with Shishi. He said with a wry smile, "Huijia Primary School is indeed good, but it has exams. Our 5 families, children, and parents all have to take the school's exams or interviews. What if they don't pass? Or if Lan Zhoukai was eliminated alone, how would he explain it to Lan Xian? This will think of something," Yang Yi muttered. Chapter 757. Xian, let's go home. When Yang Yi and Lan Zhoukai came out of the study, it was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Wu Jingjing walked to the stairs and called Lan Xian, who was playing with Shishi on the second floor. "I don't want to go home. You can go." Lan Xian was having fun. How could she be willing to leave? She ran to the stairs on the second floor, stuck out her little head and shouted. Hearing Lan Xian's words, Lan Zhoukai remembered what Yang Yi had said before. He shook his head to Yang Yi and Murphy with a wry smile and said, "A grown girl can't be kept at home. She's playing so much that she doesn't care about home. She's going to kick her parents away." "Aunt Jingjing, can Xian play in my house?" Another little head stuck out from the stairs. It was Shishi. In fact, Lan Xian often came to play with Shishi. On weekends, she often stayed in Yang Yi's villa to sleep with Shishi. Shishi looked downstairs expectantly, hoping that she could play with her friends until late as usual. "Not today, Xian. Your father just came back today. How can you ignore him and go out to play?" Wu Jingjing said. Murphy smiled and helped Wu Jingjing. Shishi, you and Xaner come down first. We'll talk about it later. The two little girls came down from upstairs. However, Lan Xian was still stubborn. She didn't want to go home with her parents. Wu Jingjing was slowly persuading her. At this time, Tong Tong, who was sitting on the carpet and playing by himself, turned his little head and saw the little red horse in his sister's hand. The bright color immediately attracted the little guy's attention. Ah! The little guy smiled happily, waved his little hand, and shouted at his sister. What are you talking about? Murphy, who was at the side, shifted her gaze back to her son. She smiled and hugged him, intimately holding his little face as she asked. At this moment, Tong Tong was unwilling to interact with his mother. He pushed his mother's face away with his meaty little hands and pointed at Shishi. He said anxiously. What do you want? Do you want a sister? Murphy misunderstood and greeted Shishi with a smile. Sister, your brother wants to play with you. Shishi was looking at Lan Xian and her mother. When she heard her mother call her, she ran to her mother's side. However, she didn't have time to play with her brother right now. She blinked at her brother, and then turned to look at her friends. Mom, why can't Xaner stay and play with me? Shishi snuggled up to her mother and started talking to her. Of course, Tong Tong didn't want to play with his sister. His eyes were fixed on the little red horse that his sister was holding with both hands. He saw his target approaching from afar and finally stopping in front of him. It was like an airdrop smashing his face. The little guy's lively eyes flickered. At this time, he couldn't hold back anymore. He didn't even cry out. He grinned, leaned forward, and reached out with his right hand to grab the little red horse. Shishi noticed Tong Tong's actions. The little girl lowered her head and looked at her brother in surprise. Your brother wants to play with your little red horse, Murphy said with a smile when she saw it too. Shishi had a very good personality. She wasn't selfish. Although she wasn't willing to give away her favorite things to others, she would never be unwilling to let others take a look. It wouldn't spoil even if they took a look. Shishi's attitude was very good. Hearing her mother's words, the little girl looked at her brother, who was drooling while staring at her little wooden horse. She generously pushed the little red horse into her brother's arms and said, "Okay, you can play with it." Oh, Murphy felt that this scene was very heartwarming. She hurriedly turned to tell Yang Yi and Lance Hao Kai. Look, just now, Shishi wanted to play with sister's little red horse. She didn't say a word and took the little red horse away. She's so sensible, Lance Hao Kai praised. Wu Jingjing was also moved like Murphy. She cried out and said, Shishi is so kind. Xaner, you have to learn from Shishi. I don't want to. I don't have a brother. Lan Xian was still throwing a tantrum. Yang Yi also smiled and gave his daughter a thumbs up, although he had seen the scene just now. However, Shishi was a little confused. She said, Mom, I said something. I said it to brother. Brother, you can play with it. This semantic misunderstanding made the adults laugh one after another. Shishi frowned. She didn't understand why they were laughing. However, at this time Tong Tong, who was holding the little red horse, pushed it to the ground in front of everyone. The little red horse was actually not heavy. Although it was not a suitable toy for Tong Tong, Tong Tong did push it to the ground on purpose. He even stuck his head out and watched the little red horse fall, with his big bright eyes. Fortunately, there was a soft carpet on the ground. When the little red horse fell, it only made a dull thud. It wasn't a big deal. Hey, little brother lost my little red pony. Shishi heard the noise and immediately squatted down. She held the little red horse in her arms and pouted. She didn't see that Tong Tong had pushed it to the ground. However, Shishi liked the little red horse so much that she treated it as her baby. Naturally, she was unhappy that it fell on the carpet. Hey. When his sister picked it up, the little guy stretched out his little hand and asked for the little red horse again. What was worse was that Tong Tong didn't think that it was a bad thing that he threw it. He thought that his sister was playing with him. Therefore, he smiled happily, showing his little dimples. Looking at Tong Tong's innocent big eyes and cute smiling face, Shishi's heart softened. She hesitated for a moment. After checking that the little red horse wasn't damaged, She stuffed it into her brother's arms. Okay, I'll let you play with it. But brother, don't drop it. She pouted and said. However, Tong Tong was even more obvious this time. He pressed the little red horse with both hands and patted it on his legs. Then he leaned out and pushed the little red horse with great effort. Pfft! The little red horse fell to the ground. The little guy thought that it was very funny. He danced and giggled. He looked at his sister and smiled as if he wanted to tell his sister that it was very interesting. The adults were about to burst out laughing. Oh. She finally couldn't take it anymore. She picked up her little red horse again, and ignored her brother this time. She turned her head and plunged into her father's arms. She pouted and complained to her father unhappily. Papa, brother is too naughty. He did it on purpose. You can't let him play with you. At this time, Lon Xian ran out of her mother's arms and angrily ran to Shi's side. She said with righteous indignation, Your brother will damage the little red horse. Okay, don't get involved. Hua is still so young. How can she understand these things? Wu Jingjing smiled and pulled her back. At this time, Tong Tong cried out again. He looked at his sister who had run into his father's arms. He didn't realize his mistake at all, and was even smiling and waving his hands. Okay, don't bully your sister. Your sister loves you so much. Murphy pulled Tong Tong's hand away and said with a hint of reproach, You'll hurt your sister's heart. Actually, Tong Tong didn't understand these things. Children who liked to grab and throw things they liked were common behaviors of children at this stage. They might not be playing pranks, but they might be training some kind of ability of theirs. Fortunately, Yang Yi had a way to coax Shishi. He moved closer to his daughter's ear and whispered, It's okay. Your brother doesn't understand, but I can help you. Tomorrow, when I make a little red horse for Xian Air, I'll make a smaller one. And it'll be a little ugly. It won't be as pretty as your little red horse. If your brother wants it, you can give him the smaller one. He can throw it however he wants, okay? When Shishi heard this, she felt that it was quite interesting. The grievance in her heart disappeared. Then we don't want my brother to play with it now? Shishi asked softly. Okay. We'll secretly hide your favorite one. Tomorrow, we'll give him a fake one. Yang Yi smiled as he discussed with his daughter. The little girl nestled in her father's arms and smiled until her eyes almost turned into crescents. Chapter 758. On a rainy day, Yang Yi sent Murphy to the studio to practice dancing, and he came to the coffee shop alone. Last time, Yang Yi heard from Guozi that he used to study at Huijia Primary School. Wasn't he preparing for the exam of Huijia Primary School? Therefore, he wanted to invite Guozi over for a chat and learn from someone who had been there before. However, Guozi was still in class, and so were Ding Xiang and Fang Tang. Yang Huan was the only one in the coffee shop. It was raining outside, and no students came to buy coffee at this time. Yang Huan was innocent. Seeing that there was no one in the coffee shop, she was bored, so she changed into her uniform and came down to help. As a result, she met Yang Yi and was scolded by this guy, who had completely carried out the old saying that an elder brother was like a father. If you have nothing to do, why don't you study? Even if you don't have many cultural classes, it's good to watch movies and study other people's acting skills. Yang Huan was not convinced. She said, Brother, our teacher said that it's useless to just watch movies. We have to practice from acting. We have to reflect and summarize. Don't talk back. Yang Yi glared. I'm not teaching you the method but the attitude. You have to have a good attitude. If you want to be a good actor, you can't relax. Look at Xiaoguo, she has already started to play the leading role. With your acting skills now, who dares to give you the leading role? Yang Huan's eyes lit up. She said, There is. Brother, Sister Ding Xiang received a call the day before yesterday, saying that a director wants to invite me to play the leading role, the female lead. What movie? Which company is it? Yang Yi frowned and asked. It's not a very famous company. Sister Ding Xiang doesn't feel comfortable, but it's just a youth romance movie, and I'm the female lead. Yang Huan looked at Yang Yi eagerly and said, Brother, do you think I should seize this good opportunity? Yang Huan's words made Yang Yi understand. Why would someone give you the leading role? Have you auditioned? Yang Yi asked. There's no need for an audition. He said that my image and temperament fit the role of the first female lead. Besides, I'm very famous, so there's no need for an audition, Yang Huan said. Isn't the point the last sentence? Yang Yi smiled faintly. Yang Huan hesitated for a moment before she mumbled. Sister Ding Xiang said the same thing. She said that other people value my fame, and a movie that wants to ride on my fame won't be a good movie. Of course. If you act in director Chen Fengchen's movie, do you think director Chen will let you be his actor without an audition because of your fame? Yang Yi snorted. But brother, I heard from a senior sister that if you haven't played the leading role before, your luck will always be suppressed. No matter how good your acting skills are, others will only let you play the supporting role. I think it's rare to have a leading role. Even if it's a bad movie, at least I've played the leading role. Chances will keep coming in the future. Yang Huan was a little stubborn at this moment. No, if your acting skills are not good enough, you'll be irresponsible for yourself and the movie if you play a role that you can't play well. Yang Yi frowned and said, I didn't ask you to participate in the limit challenge, so that you can gain fame and take the opportunity to play the leading role. I know. You've said many times that I should learn more from Brother Shan and Brother Jia. Yang Huan said sullenly. Yang Yi nodded and said, Fame is a consumable, and it will be used up one day. Only by honing your acting skills will you be able to walk on this path for a long time. Yang Huan was also at a rebellious age. Actually, at this time, she was not in the mood to listen to so many preachings. The more she listened, the more she felt that Yang Yi was like their father, Yang Chonggoe. It was so annoying. Oh, I know. I'm just thinking about it. I'm addicted to playing the leading role in the movie. Yang Huan rolled her eyes and changed the topic. By the way, brother, there's something that I'm not sure about. I want to discuss it with you. What's the matter? Yang Yi asked. I'm telling you. But you're not allowed to tell anyone else. You can tell my sister-in-law, but you can't tell anyone else. Yang Huan said to Yang Yi mysteriously after looking outside the coffee shop. Yang Yi could not keep a straight face at this time. He smiled and said, Tell me, what is it? You're so mysterious. Yang Huan leaned on the bar counter and lowered her head. She whispered to Yang Yi, Don't you think that Guo is interested in Sister Ding Xiang? The two of them? Yang Yi looked at her in surprise. He really didn't feel anything. Previously, he had reminded Yang Huan to guard against fire, burglars, and Xiaogua. However, when he saw that Guozi really didn't have any feelings for Yang Huan, he didn't care about Guozi becoming best friends with Yang Huan and Ding Xiang. Moreover, when Yang Huan mentioned this, Yang Yi remembered that when he and Guozi first met Ding Xiang, Guozi liked Yuan Lei. Ding Xiang also knew about it. Therefore, there should not be any sparks between them. If there was, after knowing each other for 2 years, the sparks would have started a fire. Impossible. Yang Yi shook his head. Really? Yang Huan was excited when she started gossiping. She told Yang Yi, I have a lot of evidence. For example, last week, Guozi and I went to Min Province to record a show. Guozi secretly bought a gift for Sister Ding Xiang. Yang Huan proudly described how she saw through Guozi's clumsy lie. Then, she said that she had secretly inquired about Ding Xiang and Guozi's life in Shanghai. There's more. Yang Huan said with a smile. Didn't Guozi give Sister Ding Xiang a crystal hairpin for her birthday last year? Yang Yi remembered the crystal hairpin. He nodded. I was joking with them back then. But it was a joke, so we didn't take it seriously. Now that I think about it, Guozi must have liked Sister Ding Xiang back then. Yang Huan said with certainty. Yang Yi heard some clues from Yang Huan's words. He furrowed his brows slightly, feeling a little complicated. As a friend, he was happy to know that Guozi liked Ding Xiang. After all, Ding Xiang was a real girl. Yang Yi saw her as his second sister. Guozi was a good person too. If the two of them liked each other, they would be a good couple. However, Yang Yi was past the age of believing in fairy tales. Guozi and Ding Xiang were very different in terms of status and background. Guozi was a combination of the second generation of an official and the second generation of a rich family. It could be said that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Of course, his silver spoon was not as big as Lan Xian's, but it was still a prominent family. On the other hand, Ding Xiang's background was poor. Not to mention Guozi's family background, if her mother-in-law was slightly snobbish, she would also look down on Ding Xiang's background. If he did not know Guozi's character, Yang Yi would definitely send his second sister, Ding Xiang, far away. He would rather break up a couple than let Ding Xiang get involved in the mess of a wealthy family. What's Ding Xiang's attitude toward Guozi? Yang Yi asked Yang Huan after some hesitation. Chapter 759. What was Ding Xiang's attitude towards Guozi? Yang Huan couldn't figure it out herself. I think Sister Ding Xiang likes Xiaoguo. She helped Xiaoguo lose weight so seriously. She even took care of Xiaoguo's diet when they were in Shanghai, Yang Huan said. Yang Huan said. Then he scratched his head and said, but I don't know what's going on between them. They like each other, but they seem to be lacking a little bit. How should I put it? Passion. Yang Huan didn't know if she had used the right word. She found it strange. Guozi liked Ding Xiang, but they had been in Shanghai for a long time, and there was no progress in their relationship. Ding Xiang's situation was even more confusing. More than a friend, but not yet a lover? Yang Yi thought of a popular saying in his previous life. Yes. Yang Huan nodded happily. Not yet a lover. Girls were emotional creatures after all. Even a carefree girl like Yang Huan was no exception. When she heard this word, she felt that it was very beautiful. However, this state of more than a friend, but not yet a lover, was actually nonsense. Behind the beauty, there were more delays and injuries. Yang Yi and Yang Huan chatted until Yang Huan couldn't hold it in anymore and asked, Brother, why don't you say anything? Xiaoguo and Sister Ding Xiang are like this. How can we help them? Help them? Don't worry about anything. You can't even handle your own affairs, so why should you care about others? Yang Yi waved his hand and pulled a long face. After a while, Guozi came over after class. Yang Yi talked to him about Huijia Primary School. Speaking of which, the test is actually very simple. For the parents, it's a personality test. The questions are randomly selected from their question bank, and there's no right or wrong choice. Because of the large number of questions and the short amount of time, the parents can only think about how they usually do it. They don't have time to think about which method is better. Guozi said. Give me an example, Yang Yi said with interest. He had never done such a test before. For example, there's a question like this. Are you willing to have a wide social circle? A. Yes. B. If I have a choice, I would prefer to be alone. Guozi was able to recall everything easily. A person with a good memory was indeed different. I choose B, Yang Yi said. However, as soon as he said that, Yang Yi regretted it. He asked, in this case, should I choose A? Because Huijia Primary School might want the parents to be sociable and outgoing. Guozi shook his head and said, it doesn't matter. You can choose either option because according to my observation, in Huijia Primary School's test for parents, they don't care about the parents' introverted or extroverted personality. Instead, they pay more attention to the parts of the parent's personality that may affect the child, such as honesty, enthusiasm, positivity, etc. For example, if they find out that the parents repeatedly choose against their own subjective wishes in the test, and try to pretend to have a perfect personality, they will deduct a lot of points because they think that if you're used to deceiving, the children's personality might be affected, and they will be extra cautious during the screening. Of course, this is only one of the factors. In the personality test, if they find that the parents are not enthusiastic about the children's education, and do not care about the children, then they will also think that in the next 6 years, the school's education may not receive the cooperation of the parents, and that this is a hidden danger. Also, the parents' personalities cannot be too extreme. If a teacher points out some problems with the children, the parents will not patiently teach, but will use scolding and beating to provoke the child's rebellious nature, or stubbornly blame the mistakes on the school, affecting the school's teaching order. As Yang Yi listened, he marveled at the wonders of this world. It was just a personality test, but there were actually so many twists and turns in it. Then how can we pass this test? Yang Yi waited for Guozi to finish, then asked with a frown. We have 5 children, 5 pairs of parents. It's best if we can all pass. Don't let anyone be suddenly eliminated. Like your big brother Lan, he's a respectable person. He can't afford to lose face like this. Yang Yi himself was also a little uneasy. Although he had used Lan's Hao Kai as an example, how could he not lose face like this? To be foolproof, you all first have to examine yourselves to see if you have a stubborn and extreme side, said Guozi seriously. No, these parents all have pretty good characters, said Yang Yi. He was worried about himself. Then it's not a big problem. Answer the questions according to your own situation, and don't cheat. Guozi said, there are a lot of questions and they're randomly distributed, so there may be repeated parts. If you try to go against your conscience and choose a choice you think is good, you may give yourself away in some part later on. In any case, you all just have to answer the questions according to your own heart. That's all? Asked Yang Yi, a little surprised. He noted it down carefully, preparing to tell Lan's Hao Kai and the others when they got back. I'm not done yet. Guozi suddenly smiled slyly and said, just go ahead and take the exam. Leave the rest to my aunt. I'll give the name list of your 5 families to my aunt. My aunt is a board member of Huijia Primary School. If you all pass, that'll save a lot of trouble. If by any chance there's someone who can't pass, my aunt will help take care of it and let you all pass. Yang Yi was speechless for a moment. Yang Yi looked at Guozi for a while, then used a finger to point at this guy and complained. Isn't this still going through the back door? You beat around the bush for so long. Why are you talking about this personality test? Guozi laughed slyly. It looked like he had also learned bad things from that bunch of old foxes. Not taking a shortcut when there was one. Yang Yi was not so pedantic. He only frowned and asked, if there's such a relationship, why didn't you say so last time? You didn't ask. I thought you all wouldn't go to Huijia Primary School and would go to some other school for the elite. Guozi shrugged and said, Big Brother Lan is such a rich person. He doesn't seem like someone who would be willing to send his children to Huijia Primary School. Guozi did not like to talk about his family background. He changed his mind. Yang Yi shook his head. Speaking of which, how do you know so much about these tests? When you were in primary school, you were still very young, right? Could it be that you studied it back then? Guozi scratched his head and said embarrassedly, I actually heard about it. 2 years ago, I have a relative whose child also wanted to take the exam for Huijia Primary School. My aunt told them a lot. At that time, the family was having a meal together during the new year. I was sitting at the side. Why can't your aunt be sent in directly even though she's already a board member? Why does she still have to take the exam? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. My dad said that we shouldn't set a bad example for our children. We should try our best to follow the procedures and take the exam like other children. It's best if they pass, but if they don't, then we'll think of other ways. We can't let them take the back door for granted. Guozi said. No wonder Guozi's personality was not as arrogant and despotic as other second-generation officials. The influence of family was very important. His father, Guo Zhengyan, was now the executive deputy mayor of Jiangcheng. However, he had been in charge of disciplinary work in the past. As expected, he was full of righteousness. You have a point. Yang Yi thought about it carefully. We should do the same. We should let the children do their best to prepare for the exam, and try not to take the back door and get in on their own. Now tell me, how are the children's exams? The two of them chatted for a long time, all the way until noon before this topic ended. At noon, Yang Yi found a restaurant to treat Guozi to lunch. He still had to talk to Guozi about Ding Xiang's problem. Chapter 760. After the heavy rain, the sun finally peeked out from behind the dark clouds. The golden sunlight pierced through the clouds like a sword and spread down. The mountains, rivers, and the human world suddenly became bright. Yang Yi and Guozi walked out of the coffee shop. They stepped on the spotless concrete and walked past the grass that had absorbed enough rainwater. Breathing in the fresh air after the rain, they instantly felt refreshed. The mountains were good, the rivers were good, and the people were even better. Even Ding Xiang, who was walking towards them, looked fresh and beautiful. Perhaps it was an illusion, but the tanned and thin sister Ding was now plump, and her skin was much fairer. It was as if a girl really changed 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Under the nourishment of Jiangnan, she looked more and more like a healthy and beautiful girl. Perhaps it was because of Yang Huan's words, but Guozi's eyes lit up when he saw Ding Xiang. Yang Yi didn't know whether it was because of Guozi's words, but he felt that Guozi was full of energy when he saw Ding Xiang. "Hey, sister Ding Xiang, I'm going to eat with brother Yang. Do you want to join us?" "No need. Brother Yang invited you alone." Ding Xiang looked at Guozi and then at Yang Yi and smiled. "If you don't go, I might not be able to hold myself back when I see plates of delicious fatty meat." Guozi joked. "I'll give you a break today. You and brother Yang can eat to your heart's content. However, you have to exercise twice as much tonight to consume the extra energy." Ding Xiang gave Guozi enough face. He don't worry, Ding Xiang. Let's go for a sweet meal. There's not much meat. It won't affect his diet." Yang Yi smiled and pulled Guozi to his side like an eagle catching a chick. It was just a joke. Yang Yi didn't really take Guozi to eat grass. They went to a food stall at the east gate of the school and ordered a few dishes. They ate and chatted slowly. "Why did you only invite Ding Xiang and not Huan Huan?" Yang Yi suddenly asked when he heard Guozi rambling. Guozi was caught off guard and stammered. "I saw that sister Ding Xiang just came back, so I thought she hadn't eaten yet." Yang Yi looked at Guozi. His calm eyes put a lot of pressure on Guozi, who was trying hard to cover up his lie. He spoke for a while and then stopped. "Do you really like her?" Yang Yi did not beat around the bush and cut to the chase. Guozi looked into Yang Yi's eyes and hesitated for a moment, before nodding dejectedly. "I remember that when you liked Director Du in the past, you acted very carefree. Moreover, you can't wait to tell us all your thoughts and preparations. Why did it seem like he had made a mistake? And you're hiding this idea and not telling anyone?" Yang Yi chuckled and said, "Xiaoguo, this is not like you." At this moment, Guozi's heart seemed to be locked by heavy shackles. He shook his head heavily and said, "Because in the past, I didn't know anything. I thought that I could risk my life for love. But now I understand." Using a sentence from a book, it is love is a kind of responsibility. At this moment, Yang Yi looked at Guozi with some surprise. He didn't expect that in these 2 years Guozi, who had grown from 16 to 19 years old, had made great progress mentally. It seemed that society was indeed a place to train people. In this regard, Yang Yi also overturned some of his previous judgments about Guozi. He deliberated over his words and said, "I shouldn't interfere with the relationship of you young people, but Ding Xiang is different. You know that she had a hard time in the past, and now she has finally stabilized. I understand what you mean, brother Yang. I also know that I am not good enough for sister Ding Xiang. She is so gentle and kind, and she treats me so well. I shouldn't hurt her. When I met her, I still like someone else. Although it was 2 years ago, now that I suddenly say that I like her, I don't know if I am a strong-willed person," Guozi said dejectedly. Yang Yi was speechless for a while. After a while he rolled his eyes and said, "Do you think we don't know what kind of person you are? You are usually flirtatious, but to be honest, you are a good person. You are not a half-hearted person who deceives a girl's feelings." If Guozi was such a person, he wouldn't be a blank piece of paper when it came to relationships, and he wouldn't have made so many silly reflections after discovering that he liked Ding Xiang. Guozi scratched his head, somewhat confused. "I don't object to you liking Ding Xiang, but I am worried that your liking is just lip service, and you are impulsive? Or do you really like her, and have a long-term plan?" Yang Yi's face became serious. "If it is the former, I don't want you to hurt Ding Xiang. After all, she is our friend. Moreover, Ding Xiang is a very simple girl. If you hurt her, I will really beat you." Guozi was anxious and blurted out, "How could I? I am not impulsive. I have thought about it for a long time. I really like sister Ding Xiang and I want to marry her." This blurted confession to Ding Xiang might have been suppressed in Guizi's heart for a long time. After saying it, his face and ears turned red, and he was a little emotional. You want to marry her? Give her a lifetime? This is a very heavy promise, and not a child's play, Yang Yi said seriously. However, Guizi was a little discouraged. He lowered his head dejectedly and said, I know this is not a child's play, so I didn't dare to say it out. Why? Yang Yi asked. Because I don't know if I can do it. Brother Yang, I am very confused. Guizi seemed to have found support in Yang Yi. His eyes were red, and he shook out the heavy burden that he had been carrying in his heart for the past 2 months. I don't know if I am together with Sister Ding Xiang, and I want to marry her. Will my family give her a lot of pressure? It turned out that what Guizi was worried about was the same as what Yang Yi was worried about. Moreover, he had taken the initiative to consider for Ding Xiang. He didn't dare to take that step rashly, fearing that they wouldn't even be friends in the future. Of course, Guizi obviously couldn't bear to let it go. He had been wavering and hesitating. After understanding Guizi's thoughts, Yang Yi felt a lot more relaxed. If your family doesn't agree, why can't you fight for their approval? Yang Yi asked. It's just like how you are now an actor, trying your best to chase after your dreams. Didn't you also gradually gain their approval? Guizi was stunned. He hesitated for a moment and said, They didn't completely approve of me. It's just that they don't know what to say about me now that I have become famous, because of the limit challenge. That's because you're not strong enough, Yang Yi said in a low voice. You're still too weak. When your strength is enough to be on the same level as your father and your family, when you can talk to them as equals, then you will have the ability to resist the pressure from your family. Only then will you have the capital to choose your own future. Smart people don't need to say much. Guizi immediately understood what Yang Yi meant. He fell into deep thought. Most of the time this world isn't fair. When we meet the love of our life, we always seem weak and unable to give the promise that we want to give. Don't complain. Why didn't you let me meet the right person at the right time? What we should do is to make ourselves stronger as soon as possible, Yang Yi said faintly. That afternoon, no one knew what Yang Yi and Guizi talked about. It was as if the conversation at noon didn't exist. Everything went on according to its original plan. However, after that afternoon, Guizi quietly became more diligent. Chapter 761. Guizi was not the only one who wanted to become stronger as soon as possible. There was also Yuing, who insisted on attending classes at Sahara Publishing every Friday. Yuing, who had received 50,000 yuan in support, did not seem to have much change in her life, except for her residence. She moved out of the dark and crowded urban village and brought her family to live in an ordinary but quiet and beautiful old-fashioned community. This was a welfare housing community of a state-owned enterprise that had been built for more than 20 years. Yuing rented the house from an old employee who had moved out. Although it was still a staircase house with 2 bedrooms and a living room, compared to the urban village she used to live in, the house now was much more spacious. The windows were bright and clean, and the air was airy. It was more comfortable and warm to live in. However, Yuing continued to work in the restaurant. She did not dare to quit her job to concentrate on writing. Yes, she did not have the courage to cut off her means of retreat, but this was indisputable. After all, she still had the responsibility of raising her daughter. How could she dare to cut off the family's only source of income before she had a new stable income? Of course, it was still very hard to write while working. Moreover, Yuing worked in the food service industry and worked very long hours. But Yuing still persevered. Moreover, she still insisted on attending classes at Sahara Publishing every Friday. She was 10 times, 100 times more hardworking than when she was a student. Yuing worked hard to become stronger in order to fight for a better future for her family. On the 3rd Friday of May, Yuing came to Sahara Publishing again. However, Sahara Publishing was a little lively today. There was a banner at the door and some decorations were placed. There were also some people who looked like reporters gathered, either taking photos or chatting. They walked inside in 2s and 3s. I have a dream. Sahara Publishing Children's Book Author Support Fund. First supported work press conference. Ewing softly read the content of the banner. Note 1. A familiar voice came from the side, Danai. Editor 1. Ewing turned her head and found that it was her editor, Wen Xiefeng. He happened to be receiving reporters at the door. What did you say? Wen Xiefeng smiled. Danai, the protagonist of today's press conference, is a new author supported by the support fund like you. He is also a father. His book is published today. As it is the first work completed and published with the help of the support fund, the publishing house arranged a more grand press conference for him. It had to be said that this guy was a very lucky guy. So fast. His book has already been published? Ewing was a little surprised. Her manuscript was progressing very slowly, and she was only at the 3rd story. Of course, this was also because she had followed Chief Editor Lu's instructions and treated her work with excellence. For example, every time after listening to a lecture at the Sahara Publishing House, she would constantly revise or even rewrite the previous manuscript according to the new understanding she had obtained until she was satisfied. Don't worry, you're different from Danai. Wen Xiefeng comforted her. Danai wrote a short story and he's also an artist, so it's faster to publish a book. You're writing a long story, so of course you'll need more time to write it. Wen Xiefeng was wrong. Tang Nai was not an artist. He was just a student who graduated from an art major. Before he met the support fund, he was even worse off than Ewing. He was poor and could only rely on drawing portraits for people in the square to earn some money for milk powder for his children. The Sahara Publishing House gave him a chance to change. Not only did they give him support, but they also taught him how to change his original style and cater to the children's preferences. Of course, Tang Nai also put in a lot of effort to get the picture book published. This was a very inspirational story, and it would definitely be reported by many media outlets tomorrow. However, people not only needed inspirational stories, but also needed to face reality. Ewing asked Wen Xiefeng realistically, how much money can he make after his book is published? How would I know? It depends on how much he can sell. Wen Xiefeng and Ewing walked into the publishing house and whispered with a smile, however, I don't think it'll be too bad. The marketing department did a survey before, and the children's literature market is very big. Think about it, Mr. Yang's first collection of children's stories has been published for more than a year, and he still earns a few million after tax every month. Tang Nai can't compare to Mr. Yang, but he can at least earn a few 100,000, or even a few million, right? Even if it was a book that earned so much, it would completely change Tang Nai's life. That much? Yu Ying's eyes widened in surprise after hearing that. Yes, that's why you should write well. Meeting Sahara Publishing House and Mr. Yang is an opportunity that others can only dream of. Wen Xiefeng suddenly pursed his lips and motioned Yu Ying to look to the other side. Ewing looked over and saw that at the entrance of Sahara Publishing House's largest conference hall, Chief Editor Lu and several higher-ups of the publishing house were surrounding Yang Yi, and Yang Yi was shaking hands with a man with a smile. That's Tang Nai. Wen Xiefeng sighed. The first author to publish a book is very lucky. Because he's the first, the publishing house's publicity will be more grand. For future authors and published books, there may not be such a grand press conference. At most, some authors whose books have sold well will be invited to attend some events or book signings. Ewing didn't care about these formalities. She saw Yang Yi shaking hands with the other party, and after a few words, he left from the back with a bag. The press conference hasn't started yet, right? Why did Mr. Yang leave? Ewing asked Wen Xiefeng, puzzled. Isn't he going to attend the press conference? He's not attending. Mr. Lu invited Mr. Yang, but Mr. Yang said that Tang Nai is the main character today, and it's not good for him to steal the limelight. Wen Xiefeng said. Indeed, Yang Yi was too famous. If he appeared at the press conference, he would definitely steal the limelight, and the reporters' questions would undoubtedly fall on him. Then why did Mr. Yang come? Ewing asked, puzzled. He came to see Tang Nai and give him some encouragement. This is Mr. Lu's request. I didn't expect that a busy celebrity like Mr. Yang would take the time to come. Wen Xiefeng sighed. That's why I said that meeting Sahara Publishing House and Mr. Yang is an opportunity that many people can only dream of. Mr. Yang's family business is huge, and he doesn't care about this small amount of money. Therefore, our publishing house gives the authors the most generous treatment, and we have a complete supply chain to help the authors develop their works. Even if you don't know how to draw like Tang Nai, the publishing house has dozens of artists who can help you produce a picture book. After chatting with Wen Xiefeng, Ying still went to the free training class held by the publishing house every Friday. However, she couldn't calm down for a long time. Ying's mind kept replaying Tang Nai's excited smile outside the conference hall, and his face was flushed red. I can be as successful as he is. A new desire arose in Ying's heart. In addition to the initial need for money, this was the second flame of why right that ignited in her heart. Of course, money was still the most important. Publishing a book might earn her hundreds of thousands, or even millions. This way, she wouldn't have to worry about not having an income. She could quit her job and write at home. She could also spend more time with her daughter. Chapter 762. When Xiefeng's words were not completely accurate. Yang Yi went to the publishing house not only to meet Tang Nai, but also to get a sample book to read with Xixi. Although Tang Nai's story was very simple, his paintings were very interesting. He used two painting styles in the whole book. One was watercolor, which imitated the style of children's painting. The lines were light and soft, and the colors were extremely rich and tended to be warm. The other was printmaking, which was like the printmaking style of 200 years ago. The colors were monotonous, but the lines were condensed and delicate, and the objects drawn were extremely realistic. According to Tang Nai, he used watercolor to draw the childhood life of the protagonist in the story, and used printmaking style to draw natural animals, plants, and even some of the protagonist's fantasies. Of course, the two paintings were separated, and the latter existed as the background of the text. He was indeed a student of art. He could think of using two styles of painting to express the two different spiritual worlds of the protagonist. He was indeed unique. Of course, the most important thing was that the paintings were beautiful. After Yang Yi went home, he handed the book to Xixi. The little girl looked at the pattern on the book and couldn't put it down. She was looking forward to reading the picture book with her father. At 8:30 in the evening, Yang Yi went to the next room to play with Tong Tong for a while before coming back. Xixi, who had just taken a bath, couldn't wait to climb into bed. Papa, come here. Sit here. He saw a little girl with disheveled hair kneeling on the quilt, twisting her body and smiling happily. Of course, her hair was disheveled because she had to untie the hairband to wash her hair. Later, Murphy helped Xixi dry her hair, and Xixi forgot to wear a hairband, so her long hair was disheveled like a little beggar. It was also interesting. Now Xixi was kneeling on the quilt, but her body was straight. The pair of watery cat eyes on the pink pajamas were very eye-catching. But it was not as cute as Xixi. Yang Yi sat on the edge of the bed, and placed the book on his lap. Then he lifted the quilt and Xixi crawled in like a little field mouse. Papa, I want to read many pages today. Xixi wriggled out of the blanket. After she sat up, she giggled and said to her father. Yang Yi smiled and opened the book in front of Xixi and himself. Seeing the first page, Xixi pointed at the animal in front of the little girl and asked curiously, Papa, is this a monkey? This is a chimpanzee. To be exact, it's a chimpanzee plush toy, similar to the one we bought in the zoo in Australia, Yang Yi explained. But it's like a monkey. Xixi felt a little confused. That's because the color here is warmer, so it was originally black, but now it looks a little brown. Of course, accompanying Xixi to read books was not just about looking at patterns. Yang Yi also had to read the words with Xixi. Papa gave Xiaozhen a chimpanzee plush toy. Xiaozhen calls it Pippi. Yang Yi's fingers gently moved, and he pointed to the words one by one and read them together with Xixi. Papa gave. When they were reading, Xixi pronounced the word Papa correctly. After reading it, she couldn't wait to turn around, pulled her father's clothes and said, Hee Papa, I also like this name Pippi. This picture book was well done. The words were concise, and there was only one sentence on each page. Of course, what was interesting was the picture above. After a while, She saw a squirrel in the style of the print and recognized it at once. She cried happily, "Squirrel, Papa, this is a little squirrel." "What about this?" Yang Yi pointed to another print on the same page and asked. "This is a little bird, but I don't know what kind of bird it is," she said with some embarrassment. "Just call it a little bird. Look, this should be the mother bird. It is feeding the baby bird." Yang Yi pointed to some details in the picture to Shi. "It's true," Shi said in surprise. "There is a baby bird. Here is a baby bird with two little birds. Papa, do you think there are two of them?" "There should be three. There is one here, but it doesn't open its mouth," Yang Yi said with a smile. However, the printing style squirrel was easy to recognize, but the watercolor style squirrels on the next page looked a little strange. Shi looked at them for a while, but she didn't recognize them. "They are also squirrels," Yang Yi said with a smile. "You can recognize them from their appearance. What does a squirrel have?" "A big tail." Shi looked at the left side, and then looked up at her father. "Not only is it big, but it is also curved. Look at the ones on the tree. Are they also curled up?" Yang Yi drew circles with his finger and said with a smile. "And its ears small, erect." "I know, they are all little squirrels." She grabbed her father's hand. She didn't want her father to remind her anymore. She rushed to answer and giggled. Although there was nothing funny, Shi was very happy to see it. The little girl's eyes were bright and full of spirit, and she didn't look sleepy at all. "What are these little squirrels doing?" Yang Yi continued to ask. They're climbing the tree." Shi pondered for a while and gave an answer. "Climbing the tree is not bad, but so many little squirrels are climbing the tree. Doesn't it look like you and Chen Shiryan chasing each other for fun?" Yang Yi asked. Shi's little mouth opened slightly, and she nodded her little head in a daze. "Come, let's read it together." Xiaozhen watched the bird build its nest, and the little squirrels chased each other in the tree. Shi stared at the words her father's finger was pointing at, and read it word by word. Her voice was a little muffled. "Building a nest. Jiwu builds, Jiwu nest. Building a nest." Yang Yi patiently corrected Shi's pronunciation. "Building a nest." Shi read it correctly this time. "Do you know what building a nest means?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. The little girl shook her head obediently, and didn't pretend to understand. Building a nest means that the bird builds a nest and a house for it, and its baby. This nest is their house, Yang Yi explained. Then Yang Yi threw a question out of the picture book. "Do you know how the bird builds a nest?" She shook her head again, but this time, her eyes were wide open, and there was a thirst for knowledge in them. Yang Yi took the sketch paper that he usually put on the bedside table, took a pencil, and drew for Shi. Usually he would read with Shi, and every time he would explain some common sense or scientific knowledge. At this time, nothing was more vivid and interesting than his casual drawing. He explained while drawing. It was simple and clear, and Shi could understand it easily. "Papa, why don't the birds live in a big house? Why do they build a nest with grass and branches?" Shi also raised her own question. In this way, with rich interaction, Shi spent another interesting bedtime reading with her father. After Shi fell asleep, Yang Yi covered the little girl with the quilt, and then went to the next room. He and Murphy didn't go to bed so early. Usually, Yang Yi would accompany Murphy to watch TV for a while. "I found that when you went to the publishing house today and brought back someone else's book, you were happier than when you published your own book," Murphy said with a smile. "That's because publishing my own book has become a habit, and there's not much novelty." Yang Yi shrugged and said with a smile. "On the contrary, this time I helped someone publish a book, and I helped him change his life and his child's life. This kind of achievement is quite good." In fact, there was one thing that Yang Yi didn't say. He felt a sense of achievement, not only because he succeeded in helping others, but also because he succeeded in changing the world. The foundation he set up, although it hadn't taken shape yet, had brought about a real change in the world of children's literature. In addition to Tang Nai, there were thousands of new authors who were participating in this change. He believed that in the future he could accompany Shi to read more and more wonderful children's literature. In the past he only relied on himself, and kept moving the fairy tale classics from his previous life. After all, the impact was limited. Now Yang could be considered to have made some achievements that belonged to him in this world. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.